Vale. Vale, espérate, porque ya no sé ni lo que hago. Tengo que hacer esto. Tendría que hacer que se vuelva popular entre la mayoría de los votantes. Joder, si con todo lo que está haciendo él solo. ¿No? Claro, es que ahora todas las tareas las está haciendo él, no yo. Entonces ahora si vuelvo a hacer las elecciones saldrá elegido, ¿no? Digo yo. No puedo tirarme de aquí, tío. A ver, quiero tirarme de aquí. ¡Buah! Vale, a ver lo de... Está allá arriba, vale. A ver si consigo hablar con este. Vale. No tiene tiempo. Todavía no le han dado lo del reuma. Pulpio.
Not a good time, friend. Not a good time, friend. Not a good time, friend.
¿Y cuándo es el momento? ¿Y dónde está Octavia, tío? Vamos a ver, señorito. Necesito hablar con usted.
Not a good time, friend.
Joder, tío. Me está poniendo los nervios. ¿Habrá que esperar un rato o algo o qué? Para sobrevivir debemos de ser, no ser... se cambió por debemos ser sabios, que se cambió por debemos ser oyentes, y esto terminó por cambiarse por debemos ser... Vale. A ver, ¿cómo llegaba yo a los jardines, tío? Vale, esa es la casa de Maleolo. ¿Dónde estaban los jardines? Los jardines no, lo de Octavia, tío. Vale, Octavia tiene que estar ahí, en esa casa. A ver, no sé. Encontré unas cuadrizas juntas en el Cyberpunk. ¿Sí, en serio? A ver, creo que encontramos a Ulpio aquí, con Octavia, ¿verdad? Yo creo que es aquí donde la encontré, pero es que ya no sé dónde está. No sé, tío. Esto es el principio. Averigua cómo evitar que Ulpio se quite la vida. ¿Qué acaba de pasar? Necesito que siga vivo para averiguar lo que sabe. O sea, ¿se acaba de morir otra vez? Sí, creo que se acaba de suicidar, me parece. Al final me hago aquí de oro, que no me vale para nada. Ese cofre, digo, ¿cómo te coges ese cofre de ahí, tío? Este se ha matado ya, ¿no? Se ha matado ya. Vale, a ver. Lo único... Observa a través de sus ojos. Lo único que me queda, gente, es saber cómo llegar al sitio ese, tío. De la placa romana, tío.
What is it, citizen? All right.
Vale, a ver si encuentro a Rufio otra vez. Vale, está cantando a las 40. Tengo que hablar con Domicio, para que no la líe. Ulpio. Ah, Ulpio está aquí.
Shalom, friend.
Shalom. Vale. ¿Cuál es tu historia?
You mean where am I from and all that? Judea, originally. But when I was a child, I moved to Rome with my family, Romanized my name and spent most of my life in the Jewish district of Trans-Tiberim, across the Tiber from the main city. That's where I was when the fires broke out. Everyone was running toward the river and I, listening to my inner contrarian, ran the other way. Every road leading out of Rome was in chaos, full of people with all their belongings in carts and brigands preying on them. Several hours down the Appian Way, I saw another Jewish family being attacked by 3 opportunists. So I picked up a branch from the side of the road and went to defend them. I can only assume they got the better of me because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in a forest, by a river not far from here, with no memory of how I got there. It's strange though, because I still had my purse on me. Why would a robber knock me unconscious and throw me in a river, but not take my coins?
Muy bien por tu parte de arriesgar la vida para ayudar a los demás.
A lot of good it did me. And that family. I sometimes wonder what happened to them.
¿Sabes cómo salir de aquí?
I don't. But even if I did, I'm not going
Tan
anywhere.
amoraico de sencilla.
I have unfinished business.
¿Qué opinas de la regla de oro?
Well, neither of us have a couple of hours to stand around talking about theology, law, and collective punishment, so I guess you're looking for a pithy summary? You remind me of an old story from my people about Hillel the Elder. He was approached by a Gentile and asked to explain the entire Torah while he stood on one foot. Obliging, he replied, What is
Si
hateful
os dais
to
cuenta,
you,
también han
not
reunido
do to
a gente
another.
de varias
That is
culturas.
the whole Torah.
Egipcias,
rest
griegas,
is
romanas,
commentary.
cristianas, judías.
Go and learn. Of course, what I want to know is, what kind of a god sees a young woman abducted and does nothing about it? Not
Es como
my
una
God,
prueba, ¿no?
that's for sure.
De decir, oye, vamos a meter aquí todas las diferentes religiones, aquí todas juntitas. Y es como una prueba de ver que se intenten llevar bien, ¿no? Una pregunta.
Thanks. I just wish there was a way to find out.
¿A quién vas a votar?
Galerius. He saved my life. I have a feeling he can do a lot more if given the chance.
Ah, pero... Ah, que le hemos salvado la vida ya, automáticamente. ¿Le ha contado lo de la sencilla? ¿O podemos hablar sobre sencilla?
Scintilla and I were in love. And then, 22 days ago, she went missing.
Creo que sí, porque automáticamente nos ha salido automáticamente, gente. Entonces yo creo que Galerio, claro, le hemos mandado un montón de misiones. Vale, le habrá salvado la vida. ¿Por qué no empiezas por el principio?
All right. One night a few months ago, when I was cleaning Malleolus's villa, I heard a young
Qué
woman
bonito.
singing. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. I wasn't allowed out, so once everyone else was asleep, I climbed up the inside of the villa and onto the roof, just to see where that sound was coming from. And that's when I saw her. Standing in the garden of the magistrate's villa, I just sat there on the roof, listening to her with my chin on my knees. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. And then she looked up and saw me and she smiled. I knew at that moment the fates had brought me to her. And from the moment she asked my name with this warmth and curiosity, I knew I'd have done anything for her. And so for weeks on end, each night I'd climb out of the villa and into her father's garden. We'd hold hands and talk about all the things we'd do once we got out of here. Like having our own vineyard. And then one morning I woke up and everyone was out searching for her. They said she'd vanished in the night. All I could do was keep my head down and try to hide how beside myself I was.
¿Puede ser que haya escapado de alguna forma?
All I know is she loved me. And if she had known a way out, she would have told me. She'd never have taken her own life. And there's no way anybody could have killed her under the golden rule. I can't prove it, but I just know she's still alive somehow. Even now, it's as if I can hear her voice in my head, crying out to me. That can only mean one thing. Somebody abducted her. I have no idea how or who would want to do something like that to such a sweet, lovely girl. But what else could have happened?
¿Se te ocurre quién podría haberla secuestrado? ¿Alguien como tú? No lo voy a acusar.
My guess? Malleolus had something to do with it. He is without doubt the most evil man I have ever known. I have no idea where he'd be keeping her, but there is one room in his villa, upstairs, which is always locked. I've never seen the inside of it, and I haven't been
Sí,
able
pero
to
ahí
feel a
está la
thing
mujer,
about breaking
no la
the
hija.
golden rule.
No,
But
es-
I have a feeling that if you could get in there somehow, it would shed light on a great many things.
Ya lo he intentado, allí no hay rastro de sencilla.
Really? I was sure he was hiding something in there. I feel like I've looked everywhere. At least everywhere I could get to.
A ver, dos
There
lugares
are still
más.
2 places I've never been able to reach. First, the palace. If Navia managed to get in, then I suppose
Y
Scintilla
yo no sé
could
entrar,
have too.
me cago en
The
10.
only other place she could be is somewhere in the cistern.
En la red de
network.
aljibes.
I remember hearing that Dooley had been poking around in the upper cistern before he was locked up. So you could ask him about it, I suppose.
Vale, tendremos que hacer lo de las selecciones para hacerlo de Dully, que me dé la llave. Vale.
All right, friend. Thanks for the chat.
Vale. De nada, hombre. A ver. Entonces este ya está salvado. Este, ojito con este, porque este luego te la puede liar al final de las elecciones. Tengo que hablar con Julia.
She's not here.
¿Dónde está?
Had to carry her to Lucretia's clinic this morning. Shrine of Apollo. She was acting sick. Faking it, if you ask me. Typical. If I did... What?
Uf, pesado el tío este. A ver. ¿Dónde cojones estará ahora Rufio ese? Aquí habían escaleras. Aquí arriba. Ah, vale. Aquí no había nada más. Ahora, ¿dónde cojones está Rufio?
Isn't the great temple majestic?
Name's Rufius.
Vale. Este me va a preguntar por lo del arco. ¿Sabes cómo salir de aquí?
No, I don't. I did hear a rumor that Aurelia, the tavern keeper, has been offering to sell a way out. But I barely have two sesterci to rub together.
Joder, ahora ya no le puedo sobornar.
No idea what you're talking about?
Tengo que decirle lo mismo de antes.
I know. I'll leave him alone.
Vale, pero yo lo que quiero...
You there.
Ah,
I'm
pesado.
sorry to trouble you, but I couldn't help.
Que no te voy a dar el arco,
Here I am,
pesado.
get my hands on it. And before you ask, no, I wouldn't dream of trying to buy it from you. I have no use for a wooden bow myself. But I would like to propose a...
Que no me interesa.
You're not...
Hazlo, dice. A ver, es que estoy pensando, a ver si necesitamos el arco dorado. Venga, cuéntame más. La voz me está diciendo que lo haga.
Tell me, do you have any idea how people here end up as golden statues? And here I... So, now, I come with the ability to use and even...
Creo que el arco del huevo de oro no es más que una fábula precautoria. Tengo... Vale.
Look, I might...
Venga, me interesa.
Excellent. So the first question is, how do we get our hands on one of those golden bows? Now, I have a plan. But first, tell me, are you...
Sí, ya me lo has contado
Good.
antes.
Then none of this should be a surprise. Diana is our goddess of the hunt, the moon,
Que
and
no me la
one
cuentes.
thing priests and poets agree on is that she carried with her a golden bow. And
Que no me la
just
cuenta
how
la
would you like to
historia.
get
El arco dorado.
precise?
¿Pero quieres que lo robe yo?
Oh, gods no! If you tried that, we'd all be dead within moments. No. Here's what I propose. Then you
Ah, es verdad,
enter
lo iba a
the shrine,
pintar de
extinguish the
con...
braziers, and under cover of darkness,
Lo iba a pintar
swap
de
out
oro.
the fake for the original. It's not theft exactly. It's more of a trade. But make no mistake, this is a dangerous path, and there's no way of knowing where it will lead. But in my experience, all the best adventures begin with a risky first step. Now, you must have questions.
Ahora mismo no tengo nada que preguntar.
So, are you in, partner?
No me llames con pinche nunca más. Vale, yo me encargo.
Wonderful. Now, if you'll hand over your bow, I can get started applying a layer of gold leaf. This is a quality weapon. Now, bear with me for a moment. And here we are, A gold leaf bow.
Arco dorado falso. Un arco compuesto cubierto de pan de oro.
Now I've gone and unlocked the Shrine of Diana for you, so as quick as you can, head on inside. It's just at the end of the street on the left. May the gods not watch over you.
A la izquierda, ¿dónde? Este. Ah, y él me abre esto. Claro. Ah, pero aquí me está yo ya, ¿no? Apaga los braseros. Vale. No me roban las rodillas como si se hace una plegaria. Claramente cayó. Se acordó. Hay que apagar los braseros. Y ahora cambiar el arco, ¿no? Una gran estatua de piedra de Diana en la antigua diosa romana de la caza, la luna y el inframundo. Intercambia el arco de los. Vale, ¿y cómo hostia lo hago el intercambio? Hola. ¿Me tengo que subir la silla o algo? ¿Cómo hostias lo hago? Ah, a ver. Hay una colmena ahí, tío. ¿No? No. Ahora. Vale, vale. Vale, ha funcionado. ¿Qué hago? ¿Le doy el arco o no le doy el arco? Es que ahora tengo un arco de verdad. Dorado. No. ¿Cómo puedo anular? No sé anular las flechas, tío. Bueno, ha salido bien esto. Lo voy a guardar.
Is that you, partner? Do you have the bow?
Sí.
Wonderful. Just go ahead and slide it under the door.
Sí, este es un cabrón. Este es un cabrón. ¿Me has encerrado?
A little bit slow, aren't you? Yes, I locked you in, and until you give me my bow, you're gonna stay in there, like Tantalus in Tartarus.
¿Cómo es que esto no va contra la regla de oro? Dijiste que repartiríamos las riquezas entre los dos.
No, technically, I never said that. I said, if we were to split all those riches between the two of us, infinite wealth is still infinite. It's hardly my fault if you can't tell the difference between a hypothetical and a promise, now is it?
Ay, hostia,
I do love a good loophole.
¿Cómo pretendes que confíe en ti después de que me mintieses?
You're just gonna have to take your chances, I'm afraid. The bow, now. And don't even think about giving me the fake one. I'll recognize my own handiwork.
No te doy este arco ni en broma, encontraré otra salida.
I would reconsider my position quickly if I were you. I'm not sure if you noticed, but you're stuck in there with a hornet's nest, and they can be rather aggressive toward intruders. You know, some say it takes 27 hornet stings to kill a man, but I always wondered how anyone could have known that. Let's find out how many it takes to kill a woman, shall we?
Vale, ¿y ahora qué hago? Escapa del templo. Tiene que haber una salida, ¿no? ¿Y si disparo a eso? Es que ahora creo que las flechas se convierten en doradas, tío. ¿Veis? Lo convierte todo en oro. Qué fuerte, tío. Ahora a lo que dispara lo convierto en oro. Flecha emplumada. Las algas. Coño, ¿no puedo subir o qué? Vale. A ver si puedo salir de aquí. Las algas. ¿Tendré que disparar a las algas? ¿O puedo andar sobre las algas? A ver, algo de eso, ¿no? Tiene que ser, ¿no? Vamos a disparar a las algas, ¿eh? ¿Ves cómo se pone todo lo que puedes convertir en oro? Qué movida, ¿eh? Qué grande. Qué guapo, ¿eh? Diario de Naevia.
My beloved Galatea, I write this so that one day, when we're finally together, you will understand what I've done and why I had to do it. The others will call me mad or a monster, but I don't care what they think. Everything I'm doing here, I'm doing for you. I'll start at the beginning. Soon after my arrival here, as I walked down a corridor lined with golden statues, I thought I heard a whisper behind me, a rasp of air, as if vocal cords of metal strained to say a word or two. I tried to dismiss the idea, tried to concentrate on my work as the city's medic, but that tortured whisper haunted me.
Sí, si le hubiésemos dado al arco no se hubiese dejado encerrado igual.
In the hallway to the bathhouse,
Segurísimo.
I heard it again and found myself drawn to the statue of a Roman woman wearing a stola. Her face was contorted with anguish and fear, and disturbingly, it was as if she was looking right at me. As I walked past her, I heard that strained whisper again, and turning back, I discovered that even though I had moved, she was still looking right into my soul. That was when it dawned on me. This was no statue. This was a woman trapped within that golden prison. Naturally, I told the others, but when I could not reproduce the results of my experiment, they would not believe me. But from that moment on, I knew the full horror of this place. Immobilized within these statues are living human beings. It was that day, my love.
O sea que todos los que están convertidos en oro, en estatua de oro, están vivos realmente. Vaya movidota, ¿eh? Creo que estoy en el otro lado de un sitio que había visitado ya. Me suena esa roca, tío. Mantén pulsados B y L para subir las cornisas. Para las que lleven cuerda, ¿no? Ah, amigo, ahora podemos coger estas enredaderas y convertirlas en oro. Y así poder escalarlas, ¿no? Como estas de aquí, claro. Interesante. ¿Cómo se va conectando todo, tío. Ay, ¿qué pasa? Cargando. Esta puerta está cerrada. Otra forma de entrar en el palacio. Ya estamos en el palacio. Tras las puertas cerradas. Bueno. Hostias, tío, cómo giran las cabezas, tío, que cague. Uy, mierda. ¡Ay! ¡Socorro! ¿Es una vía? ¡Hostia! ¡Hala! Aparcado. Hay que darle a la cabeza igualmente, ¿eh? Vale, bien. Vale. Fofo, tú que has jugado Skyrim es igual al juego. O esto es una historia que hacer. Es una historia que hacer. No tenía que ver nada con Skyrim. Vale. Deja ya de mirarme, coño.
You're not supposed to be here.
En la vía. Las algas. Ah. Coño, lo estoy dando al otro todo el rato. Me cago en 10. Ay, que no le doy. Ay, que no le doy. Me cago en 10 para. Joder, macho. Mira por ahí. Ay, ahora no funciona. Ahí abajo. Vale, me dice. Guardando, vale. Vale, hay que ir por ahí abajo. Ay, mierda. ¿Está fallado o qué, tío? O sea, por flechas que no sea. No te vas a morir. Ahora no puedo subir ahí. ¡Ay, tu puta madre! Ah, te pillé. Toma. Coño, no te agaches, a ver. Ahora. Ay, no le he dado, tío. No le he dado. Joder, macho. ¿Qué por ahí? Hostias. Es que no le doy a mí. No sé. ¿Esto también? Sí, para poder subir, ¿no? Vale. Ah, por eso salía esto así, tío. Para entrar. ¿Hay algo allí? Hay un cofre, ¿no? No estoy dando. No le estoy dando, me cago en todo. ¿He dado o no? ¿No le doy, tío? ¿O qué? No sé anular la acción, tío. Una vez que empuño la flecha, no puedo quitarla, tío. Ah, vale. Con LB. Vale, vamos al mismo sitio que por aquí, ¿no? Sí. Voy a guardar por aquí. Hola. ¿Este mismo sitio? Ah, no, estoy al otro lado. Vale. He hecho un vistazo al pergamino cercano. ¿Qué pergamino? Llave de las puertas del palacio. Diario de Naevia, volumen 2.
My beloved Galatea, after I learned the terrible truth about the golden statues, I wandered the city as if in a nightmare. What must life be like for these poor souls, entombed in gold, but kept alive somehow? Trapped in their own personal Tartarus, consigned to eternal torment, too horrific for any sane mind to comprehend. I tried to offer them what small mercies I could. I began to talk to them, to keep them company. I'd imagine backstories for them, give them names, and tell them of the world, of the histories and stories I'd learned as a child. As the others became more concerned by my charity, I sought solitude from them, preferring the company of my tormented charges. Discovering a way into the abandoned palace, I began to spend my days walking its halls and sharing with its occupants ancient tales, my mind turning to those of Apollo and Daphne, Perseus and Medusa, and Pygmalion and Galatea. Pygmalion, the sculptor who fell in love with a beautiful statue, and who, praying to Aphrodite for aid, discovered that his beloved Galatea had come to life. It was then that I heard you whisper to me, Galatea. Forgive me. I know that is not your real name, just one I have borrowed from a story. But when I turned to look at you, I saw the most exquisitely beautiful woman I have ever known. Your face, forever frozen in a look of haunting sadness. Our meeting gave me new purpose, to free you from your golden prison, so that I might one day hear you speak, not just whisper your true name to me. So I gathered tools for the long and difficult task ahead, barred the doors to this place, and set to work.
Vale. Exhibidor. Parece que este exhibidor a medida se ha utilizado para sujetar las estatuas de oro y quitarles la película de oro. ¡Qué horror! Hostias, intentó quitarles la película de oro, tío. ¡Qué movida, tío! Ahora la puedo abrir, antes no. Vale. Te obliga a leer eso. El juego. Hay que pasar por arriba. Obligado. El piso superior del palacio. Fíjate la puerta principal. Ya no pueden pasar, ¿no? Voy a transformar esto en oro. Y ya no podéis pasar. ¡Ay! ¡Mierda! ¡Puta! Se ha escapado. Me la ha hecho, ¿eh? Me ha hecho la 12-13 el cabrón. ¡Ay! Hostia, me ha hecho la 12-13 el tío. Rápido, que viene. Vale, esto ya como lo había puesto yo de oro ya. Hostia, me caí. Estupendo. ¿Por dónde es? A ver. ¿Por dónde es? Ah, por arriba, coño, por aquí. Ah, vale. ¿Y aquí puedo trepar o algo? Sí, ¿no? Más o menos, ¿no?
Kill me. Kill me. Make it stop.
Hostia, madre.
Kill.
Vale, ya no pueden pasar a este lado, ¿o sí?
Kill me.
¿Cómo ha pasado? ¿Cómo has pasado?
Kill me.
¿Cómo pasaste, amigo? Esto por si quiero bajar, pero no me va a hacer falta.
Make it stop.
Por aquí no se puede.
Make it stop. You.
Venga, acabaré con tu vida, toma, cállate ya, pesado. Lo estáis deseando, ¿no? Venga, toma. Hay patos. Tú también. Ahora. Ya está, ya pasó. ¡Hostia puta! Pero no me pegues esos sustos, tío. Cachis en la mano. Toda la ciudad se ha convertido en oro, como así. ¿Lo vas a probar al final? Entonces no te explico nada. No te voy a hacer spoiler. Ha guardado el juego. A ver, espérate. ¿Por qué quiere que haga esto? Porque van a venir por aquí, ¿no? Seguro. Vale. Hay un pergamino. Pero no sé dónde está. Dice que eche vistazo al pergamino cercano, pero es que no... Ah, está aquí, coño. Hostias.
My beloved Galatea, my attempts at freeing these souls from their golden prisons have not been going to plan. My first charge was a Greek woman who I called Iodame after the Athenian turned to stone by Medusa. Drilling through the gold that encased her, I was vindicated by the discovery that beneath half an inch of gold, which is so rigid it must be some kind of alloy, was living flesh. Unfortunately, this golden alloy seems to have fused with her skin, so removing it exposed the sinew and muscle beneath and appeared to cause her great pain. At first, I braced myself, expecting that inflicting such pain would break the golden rule, and yet, somehow, it did not. It seems whichever god is responsible for imprisoning these poor souls does not care about their suffering at all. They are forsaken. Undeterred, I pressed on, working late into the night, attempting to remove the golden layer that encased her as delicately as I could. Eventually, I was able to free most of her body, But when I released her from her restraints, her first act was to lunge for my throat, clawing at me with all her strength and those sharp metal talons. This was my thanks for trying to save her. Whatever possessed Iodami to attack, she was clearly not a suitable subject for my experiment, and I was forced to lock her inside an isolated wing of the palace and bar the door. As I continued working on others, I could hear her flailing and launching herself at the other side endlessly. Regrettably, my
O sea que
other experiments
intentó
had similar results, and
quitarle
after
el oro,
relocating a few times,
toda la capa de oro a
most
todos
of the
los
palace
que
is now
encontraba.
too dangerous
Sin
to
embargo,
work. Still,
volvía...
as much as my heart
Da
aches
igual,
to know that
está,
you're
se
suffering,
volvía en contra igual.
I cannot risk attempting to
Estaban como
undo
medio
you
oídos.
yet.
Entonces
Not
eran toda
until
esa
I
gente que va por ahí
perfect a
vagando
method that will bring
y
you
que los
back
estamos
to
convirtiendo en oro otra vez.
in both mind and body, and ensuring your humanity is preserved. I promise you this: one day we will be together, even if I have to free every last statue in this god's forsaken place.
¡Hala! Que hay una bolsa de monedas también y no la había cogido. Let's go. Voy a hacer un guardamanual también. Este tipo sin guardamanual. ¡Hostia puta, cabrón! No me pegues esos sustos, cojones. Quita. Bicho. ¿Alguien más? Flechicas. ¡Ay! Thank you. Claro que sí, guapi. Tú por si acaso te mueves. ¡Capindiola! ¿Qué más? Casi me vale de murillo. De cobertura. Madre mía, cuánta sangre, tú. Uf. Mira, las capas de oro. ¿Las veis, tío? Con esto, claro, lo lijaba con esto, tío. Madre mía. Se le fue mucho la olla a esta tía, ¿no? Madre mía. Mira, 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 mira. No me mires así. Me ha mirado, ¿eh? Como diciendo, ¿por qué robas? Estatua medio desconchada. ¿Me estás susurrando otra vez de las estatuas de alguna forma? ¿Esta es la que nos habla? ¿Quién eres? Detrás de ti, vale. Tú debes ser Naevia.
And you must be the wretched snake who broke into my palace and disturbed my experiments. And worst of all, look at what you made me do to her. This never would have happened if you just stayed away. You're going to pay for that.
Si me atacas sacaremos como estatuas de oro. Esto no tiene relación conmigo, suerte con eso, sacar el arco dorado. Si me atacas acabaremos como estatuas de oro.
Do you think I care about that? I don't care what happens to me, as long as you get what you deserve.
Eso no tiene relación conmigo.
Liar. I locked and barred the gate. I left a message warning you all to leave me alone. I just wanted to do my experiments in peace. For her. And now look at her. You made me turn the most beautiful woman I've ever seen into this. Look at her.
Espera.
She's in agony.
¿Esta será sencilla? ¿La hija de Sentio?
To see her beautiful face, to hear her speak freely, instead of in those cryptic whispers.
Bueno, no puede ser porque estaba con oro. No.
She stopped whispering to me.
No tiene nada que ver.
She started whispering to you instead.
He querido relacionar una cosa con otra, pero
special about you?
No solo me susurra esta estatua, muchas lo hacen, pero es siempre la misma voz. Yo no escuché ningún susurro, me parece que vas a perder la cabeza.
What do you mean, the same voice?
Es como si otra persona me estuviera susurrando a través de las estatuas.
Yes. I remember when they used to whisper to me. They did sound similar. I just thought it was because all voices sound the same when they whisper. But now that I think about it, they were all benevolent and seemed to share a common knowledge. But if these bodies are mere conduits for that one voice, then this body is nobody. And everything I've done here was... Wait, I see what you're doing. You're trying to steal her away from me. Were you planning to wait until I'd done all the hard work, then swoop in? Is that it?
No.
Liar. You tried to steal her away from me, and now look what you made me
Que está como
do.
una chota, gente.
Give me one good reason why I shouldn't peel you too.
Acabé aquí por accidente, yo solo me quiero ir.
What? What are you talking about?
Me perdí los túneles de debajo de la ciudad y llegué al palacio.
Wait. So you're saying you weren't coming for us?
Nunca tuve intención de hacerte daño. No tenía pensado matarte, pero cuando he visto lo que has hecho... A ver, si la matamos... Bueno, la convertiremos en oro, no matarla. Nunca tuve intención de hacerte daño.
So I did all this. I ruined her. For nothing. What have I done? Oh God, I feel sick. I can't bear the thought of her being like this. And in so much pain. It's the air coming into contact with her flesh. It's agonizing for them. But the only way to fix it will be to break the golden rule and let it run its course. At least that way she'd be golden again, and we'd be together. All it would take is one little cut.
Un momento, puedo deshacer todo esto. No sabes lo feliz que me haría atraparte en oro. Un momento, puedo deshacer todo esto.
It's too late. There's nothing you can do. I have to do this. I'm sorry.
Podría volver a cubrirla de oro. Puedo dar marcha atrás en el tiempo y hacer que esto no ocurra.
What? Wind back time? What are you talking about?
Vuelvo a vivir el mismo día una y otra vez.
What? How is that possible?
Tengo que volver al templo de Proserpina.
The goddess of the cycle of life and renewal. Of course. But I'm confused. If you've harnessed the secrets of the gods, why tell me?
Porque nunca te acordarás de esta conversación.
I see. Well, I'll trust you to honor our bargain. But if you don't, mark my words. I'll break the golden rule and kill you and everyone else in this city. As a quid pro quo, here is the only thing of value I have left. The key to the chest in the shrine of Apollo. There should be something in there that's useful to Lucretia.
Santuario de Apolo, Lucrecia. Llave del cofre del santuario de Apolo.
Now, please leave. The door here leads out onto the palace balcony. You should be able to make your way down from there. Go.
Goodbye.
And never return.
Vale, ¿y este? Esta es Galatea. No puedo hablar con ella. ¿Y si la convierto en oro? Gente, para que no sufra. Hostia, ¿qué ha pasado? Cargado. Hostia, todo esto es de oro, ¿eh? ¿Es por aquí, por este balcón? O aquí. Hostia, cada vez que pasa por aquí carga, tío.
What? Are you still here?
Ay. No, no, es el otro, vale. ¡Hop! Algo bueno salió de todo esto, sí, sí. Joder, espérate que está cargando, tío.
You did it. You took away her pain. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you. I swear I will never harm her again.
Ah, pues mira, pues me iba a ir, ¿eh?
I'll stay here to keep her company. But these poor souls,
Al final la hemos hecho entrar
what can
en
be
razón.
done for them? I've tried everything I can. I fear the only one capable of releasing them properly is whichever god doomed them in the first place.
Nice. Ya hemos acabado con su sufrimiento, hala. Me voy. Vale, ¿veis? Y ahora puedo... Esto, con el arco nuevo, podemos hacerlo... pisable. Vista resuelta el dorado. Toma. A ver, lo del cofre, santuario de Apolo. ¿Cuál es el santuario de Apolo, gente? ¿Será el cofre ese de abajo del todo? Intentar ayudarte. ¿Era este de aquí? Es que ahora como con el arco, ¿veis? Puedo hacer eso. Claro, por eso no podíamos, tío. Botella, mira, otra botella de vino había aquí. Vale, pero ¿es este el cofre? ¿Este es el santuario de Apolo? Es que no sé cuál es el santuario de Apolo. No tengo mapa, tío. No sé si puedo convertir algo más de aquí. Creo que nada. Vale. El santuario de Apolo. No sé si será ese el cofre. A ver. Joder, Ulpio, qué susto me has dado, hijo. A ver, ¿cómo queda la cosa? Octavia, yo no sé dónde está Octavia, tío. Vale, yo creo que podemos hacer las elecciones. Es que no sé llegar a la zona que me dijo este, tío. El Rufus este, el Rufio. A ver, me marca Octavia ahora. Vale, eso es bueno. Creo que casi llegamos hasta donde está ella. Ahí vemos su opinión. Vale, ¿cómo subo? Ahora puedo subir aquí, ojo, antes no podía. ¿Dónde está esta? Vale, hay que ir por el otro lado. Esta es la casa del tonto este, ¿no? Maleolo. No, hostia, que me mato, tú. Madre mía, qué hostia me da. No pasa nada. Está todo controlado. Hablo con sus lenguas. Como uno dice suerte, porque mayormente siempre pasamos de largo. Casi me caigo, ¿no? Por leer. ¿Dónde va esta? Esta es Julia. Pensaba que era aquí. Aquí está. Todavía.
Salve, friend. I'm Octavia. Welcome to life under the golden rule. It's a ghastly thing, is it not? How are you faring so far?
Bien.
Another stoic, perhaps.
Esto ya lo hablé con ella.
I used to lay awake at night contemplating the... I still don't...
Vale. ¿Cuál es tu historia?
Here, in this place, the magistrate has me earning my keep by cleaning and pruning the gardens. It's not quite how I expected my life to go. I used to live in a lovely villa on the banks of the Tiber. I was even betrothed to a handsome young man from a prominent family. But long hours of menial labor for the good of the community has its own charms too, I suppose.
¿Cómo has llegado hasta aquí?
Oh, much the same way as many of the others. When the fires came to Rome 7 months ago, my family and I fled for the Tiber, hoping to escape on a barge. We were among the fortunate ones with enough coins for passage, but unfortunately, there were a lot of desperate people, and they boarded before we could depart. A scuffle broke out, and I was pushed overboard. The last thing I remember was the water, rising up to hit my cheekbone. I woke up by the river, near that shrine, and stumbled across this place.
Vale.
Oh, that's all
Siento oír
right.
eso.
I'm sure it's all part of God's plan for me.
Esperemos que sí. ¿No querrás decir los dioses?
Oh yes, of course. A slip of the tongue,
Sí. Vamos a hablar de otra cosa.
if you like.
¿Sabes cómo salir de aquí?
I'm afraid not. Although, I did once hear someone gossiping down at Aurelia's tavern about a possible way out. I don't put a lot of stock in such rumours, but if you're desperate and wealthy, you could look into it, I suppose. If that doesn't work, then I suppose we're all stuck here until the gods decide our fate.
Gracias, lo investigaré.
I hope it works out.
¿Qué opinas de la regla de oro?
The many shall suffer for the sins of the one. I think about those words a lot. I'd like to think that if we all love our neighbours as ourselves and do to them as we'd have them do to us, then we'll all be fine. But on the other hand, I was always taught the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and that all of us are born with a tendency towards sin. And that's where I get stuck. Is it true? Are we born with a tendency towards sin?
Creo que no, creo que la gente es buena por naturaleza. Bueno, no sé, eso parece.
If that's true, then sooner or later, things are going to end badly for all of us down here. Unless, of course, there's some kind of divine intervention.
Que no te quepa duda que habrá una intervención.
I wish I shared your faith.
Vale, entonces practicas el cristianismo.
Please keep that to yourself. I know you're not from around here, but things are very difficult for us right now. There was a terrible fire in Rome last year, and our emperor decided to make us his scapegoats. There were executions. It was horrible.
Tu secreto está solo conmigo, me parece bien. Ando buscando una placa romana que alguien ha quitado del obelisco. ¿Puedes decirme dónde se encuentra? Tu secreto está solo conmigo.
Oh, thank you. You have no idea how much I appreciate that.
Vale, ando buscando una placa romana.
Even if I had seen it, and I'm not saying I have, I couldn't in good conscience give it to you. That's all I'll say.
¿Cómo que no? Tengo un secretito. Quizás al magistrado le gustaría saberlo todo sobre tus
What
creencias.
you're doing is disgusting, and it's not going to work. Shame on you.
Ando buscando una placa romana que alguien ha quitado del obelisco.
Even if I had seen it, and I'm not saying I have, I couldn't in good conscience give it to you. That's all I'll say.
Convence a Octavia para que visite el santuario secreto.
Ah, that's a shame. Another time then.
¿Y cómo la convenzo?
What you did was extraordinary, and even if I had seen it, and I'm not...
Vale,
Ah,
no me ha quedado claro esto. Busca el templo secreto en las cuevas. Convence a Octavia para que visite el santuario secreto. Joder, con la plaquita romana, me está dando un dolor de cabeza. Bueno, podremos intentar hacer esto. A ver, ¿cómo la voy a convencer? A que me caigo. Pico. Vamos a ver. Vamos a par. No sé para qué estoy haciendo esto porque no voy a poder igualmente. Ah, no voy a poder subir. Julia.
I hope you're coping.
Búscame.
Ave.
Vale, Kicia. No sé si intentar hacerlo de Aurelia, lo de las cuevas. A este se queda aquí. Vale. Este que quiere ahora.
Salve again, friend. I went and did his...
Vale, lo mismo de
How is
siempre.
it possible?
O se lo digo.
behavior, I trust.
You're a bit like Sisyphus. Sisyphus was...
Todo esto ya lo sabemos, ¿vale? Ahora es genial. Ah, bueno, ahora me está hablando de las elecciones. Espérate. Me voy a presentar a magistrado. Estoy un poco nervioso, pero confío en que todo merecerá la pena cuando ordene la violación de Dully. Solo espero conseguir los votos que necesito. Tengo la sensación de que lo hará genial.
Oh, that's kind of you to say. Now, I'm going to keep your secret. Although, it's not as if I'll remember this next time we talk anyway, right? Oh, and if our conversation...
Vale, esto sí que ya era lo mismo.
Beautiful. Oh, you're... And there's a...
Tengo la suerte de haber recibido una educación excelente y muy cara.
Well, since you bring that up, let's cut to the chase. What are you worth?
Vale, tengo este arco dorado de valor incalculable. Llevo cientos de denarios encima. Llevo miles de denarios encima. Es que le teníamos que sorprender, algo así, pero esto era otra misión, gente. A ver, llevo miles de denarios encima.
I have that much myself. Maybe if you had at least 10,000,
10.000.
things might have been different.
Hostia, 10.000.
I take back what I said. Let's just forget that. Certainly, for 10 denarii. Have you met Livia? She used to do my hair. Now, I hear that if Malleolus is elected, he's gonna throw a small festival to... There used to be a midwife here. Unfortunately, Centilla, the magistrate's young... How can we trust him to... I heard Dacius has been offering a lot of money. Have you seen the way Rufius walks around staring at... But then, why does he have a collection of them in his room? I hear Galerius has a thing for Equitia, but of course she's... Why do silly boys always... I hear there are blasphemous cultists walking among us. You know, some even say they have a secret... I've already told you everything I know, I'm afraid.
Vale, me has dejado sin pasta. Bueno, no creo.
All right.
Vale, pues... Vale, ¿cómo llego yo ahora a la zona aquella? A ver. Aquí. A ver si las puedo convertir en vida, ¿vale? Bueno, aquí no podía subir antes. ¿Y esto? ¡Placa romana! ¡Hostia! ¡La han encontrado! Una placa con una inscripción en latín que dice Plutón, padre de las riquezas. ¡Hostias! ¡Que la encontré de casualidad, tío! Talla de madera. Una talla de madera con el símbolo de un pez. Parece ser de carácter religioso. Sí, Octavia para ver dónde reza. Teníamos la llave, hostia. Talla de madera. Vale, vale. Entonces venía aquí a rezar, tío. Esto es por aquí, pues si queremos volver por aquí, ¿no? ¡No! ¡Ay, la! ¿Qué he hecho? Se me ha ido la pinza, que se me ha ido la pinza. No, por favor. 21, 28, ¿qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? Ay, no. Ay, no. Bueno, da igual, gente. Es que la ha cagado. ¿Cómo se me ha ido la pinza? ¿Cómo se me ha ido la pinza, tío? Bueno, no pasa nada, gente. Espérate que ahora no encuentro la salida. Me cago en tu estampa. Bueno, ahora no sé dónde está la salida, tío. Por aquí creo que se podía ir. Vaya movida, tío. Se me ha ido la pinza totalmente. No pasa nada, reiniciamos el día y ya está, pero... Vale, pobre Galerio le va a tener que dar un montón de historias ahora. Es una pena porque ya tenía las placas que me faltaban y ahora vimos a las selecciones y ya está, tío. No sé si cargar, gente, Ya son 5 minutos, Vale, y lo del aljibe... Claro, es que ahora tengo el arco y puedo convertir en oro una parte. $2.35 aquí, restaré 7 horas, probar cargando. Son 5 minutos. Bueno, da igual, no pasa nada. Ahora hacemos esto, quitamos todo rápido y ya está, tío.
Salve.
Vale, todas las cosas que tienes que hacer, hijo.
You? Poor virgin. All right. Oh.
Venga, corre. Vale, a ver. Esta es Aurelia, vale, la de aquí. Voy a probar suerte otra vez a... espérate.
Oh, you're here. And... Well.
Tengo este arco dorado de valor incalculable.
So you do. And that would make you rich as Croesus on the outside.
Buah. Nada. No es asunto
That's
tuyo.
exact. Let's just...
Que te doy por saco. Epa.
You, Sisyphus, attack or pursue the stone.
Vale, ya tengo todas las placas. No, faltan 3. Falta una, que es la griega, ¿no? Sí. Vale, pero tenemos que hacer las selecciones. Un hombre virtuoso. Vale. Sí, ya está. Sí, está todo hecho, gente. Pero hay que esperar que Galerio haga todo el trabajo primero. Oye, ¿y esto, tío? No se podía pasar por aquí, tío. ¿Cómo se me ha ido la pinza, tío, antes, tío? Vale, pues mira, voy a hacer tiempo yéndome a lo del aljibe ese. Que ahora puedo pasar. Este todavía no se ha enterado de la movida. Ahora me va a parar.
Hey,
claro.
You're not thinking about going into the cistern, are you? Nobody's...
Déjame tranquilo, hombre. Vale, es que ahora tenemos el arco. Hostia, que estos salen otra vez. Vale, bien. Bicho. Quita, coño. Vale, a ver. Vale, a ver. ¿Esto dónde lleva? Ah, sí, esto lleva al otro lado, sí. Vale. Esto, ¿veis? Ahora puedo pisar ahí. Vale. Ahí. Cago en Dios que me caigo. Ya esto, un puto cofre. Joder. Vale, a ver. esto. Voy a grabar aquí. A ver si esto va a ser un final. Encuentro una forma creativa de entrar en el aljibe superior. Hola. What the fuck? ¿Dónde está apuntando? Ahora, tío, estaba apuntando mal, ¿no? Ahí estamos. Esta es sencilla.
Who are you? Did he send you?
Soy Favoriel y no me ha enviado a nadie.
Do you know you're here? You have to help me escape before that monster comes back.
¿Qué pasa aquí?
I'm Centilla.
Sencilla.
I found a way out through the gate of Horn, but it's locked. So I told him about it, and instead of helping me escape, he locked me up. He wants to keep us all here forever, or until we're turned to gold. He's a monster. You have to let me go so we can kill him and take his key.
¿Quién te ha hecho esto?
Sentius, my adoptive father.
Es su padre adoptivo.
I'll castrate and crucify him.
¿Y eso cómo no quebrantó la regla de oro?
I don't know. He said the gods are on his side because they don't want us to escape either.
¿Dónde está la salida?
Behind me. There's an aqueduct tunnel bringing water from outside the city, so it should lead us outside. The only problem is it's barred by a heavy locked gate, and he has the only key.
¿Qué piensas hacer si te libero?
I'm going to take that key from around his neck, even if it means cutting his
Claro, la llave que tiene en el cuello, lo dijo.
I'm done caring about the golden rule. I just want out. Help me, and we can escape together.
¿Y qué pasa con los
There
demás?
won't be enough time. Just you and me. What do you say?
Lo siento, pero si dejo que te vayas, todos morirán. ¿Y si los reúno a todos para que puedan escapar una vez se rompa la regla de oro? Te voy a liberar, marchémonos de este lugar los dos. Esto es una especie final, ¿no? ¿Y si los reúno a todos para que puedan escapar una vez que rompa la regla de oro?
There's no time. Wait, did you hear that? He's here. Quick, you have to let me go. It's now or never.
A ver, acabo de guardar. O sea, te voy a liberar.
Thank you. Now follow. Wait, did you hear that? He's here. He must be coming in through the door behind me. You distract him. Stay right here and keep him talking while I look for something I can use.
Vale, pero déjame moverme. Ah, viene por ahí.
What
Vale.
did you do with Centilla? Where is she?
A ti te lo voy a decir. Eres lo peor, ¿sabes?
So that is how it's going to be. Oh well, this doesn't change anything for me. It's a shame, really. If you'd just done what you were supposed to, you'd have been looping through time forever until you gave up and killed yourself. Just like that soft-hearted pleb Al.
¿Te acuerdas de Al?
Come now. Surely you didn't think you were the only one here
Anda, coño.
who remembered everything. You see, my connection to the portal somehow preserves my memories from one loop next. Whether that was Procesator's intention or a happy accident, I'll never know. But I'm surprised you hadn't noticed. Here I was thinking you're a little bit sharper than Al was. Or perhaps you're just more willing to break the rules. He was a moralistic fellow, never once compromised on his principles. And because of that fatal flaw, he relived this day many thousands of times before we finally had this conversation. I watched him come through the portal each time, always a little older, a little more disheveled, a little more haunted. And when he finally saw the futility of it all, as you're about to, it broke him. He drank a jug of wine, tied a noose around his neck, and took his own life, just before he was shot with a golden arrow. The next time I awoke, you showed up, but you've caught up to where he was so quickly. I'd have preferred if you'd given me more time to enjoy the trappings of my success. How many extra days did you give me? Just the 6? Not a lot compared with Al, but I've seized every day, nonetheless. In any case, there's no escape for you except the path that Al took, the path he wrote about on his tablet. What was it? Ah, yes. Better to end it all now than find out what awaits you beyond that portal. So, you discovered my secret. So what? What are you going to do about it?
Es decir, que me pediste que averiguara quién iba a romper la regla de oro a sabiendas de que fracasaría siempre. Sabías que había una forma de escapar y hasta encerraste a tu propia hija para mantenerlo en secreto. ¿Por qué?
Why? Isn't it obvious? Because I have grown attached to all this. My title, my beautiful villa, the sun on my face, the music of birds chirping. And as long as this day keeps repeating itself, I get to enjoy it all, over and over again, for eternity. Don't you see? I have found a way to prolong my life indefinitely, to cheat death. I have become, in effect, as immortal as the gods. Can you honestly say you would not wish the same for yourself?
Es decir, que me pediste que averiguara quién iba a romper la regla. Tendrás una muerte dolorosa por esto. A ver cómo sales de esta mediante el engaño. Bueno, es decir, bueno, vas a decírselo todo.
There's no way you could have succeeded. Every soul who has ever found themselves here has broken the golden rule eventually. It is inevitable. Man will always sin sooner or later. Any idiot could tell you this. But where others might see tragedy, I saw opportunity. As I told you the first time we met, I found a way to cheat death. By reliving the same day over and over again, forever. And I will continue living long after your dust.
A ver cómo sales de esta mediante el engaño.
Do you really think you can take on a Decurion with that flimsy little bow?
Podría, pero le dejaré salirse con la suya.
Who? Scintilla? Where is she?
I'm right here, Father.
The many shall suffer for the sins of the one.
Come on, we have to go. Hey, what's happening to you? That light, it's so bright.
Crea una paradoja temporal. Vale. Habla con Al.
Hi there. Gave me a bit of a fray. Glad I was in here alone. I'm Al.
Vale, Alworth, he venido en tu busca.
Well, here I am. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Me llamo Favoril, esperaba que supieras quién soy.
Funny you should ask. I was just reading an old tablet I found here. Well, trying. My Latin is kind of rusty, but the last entry mentioned someone with the same name. It described an event about 2,000 years ago. Someone with your name appeared in the city out of the shrine of Proserpina. freed an imprisoned woman named Scintilla, who then murdered her captor, breaking some kind of ancient law. It said the attack caused golden statues to come alive, hunting down everyone in the city and turning them into gold. Apparently, the only person to survive was Scintilla, while the stranger disappeared in a flash of light.
De hecho era yo.
What? You're saying you were here 2,000 years ago? I'm not sure I understand.
Cuando llegué aquí por primera vez en el presente encontré tu cadáver colgado de una soga.
I'm sorry, come again?
Todavía tengo la nota de suicidio que grabaste en esta lápida, mira.
Let me see that. God, why does this writing look so familiar? I've spent a lifetime in this place going around and around in circles. This is disturbing, but I don't understand how I could have written it.
Lo escribió una versión distinta de ti y he cambiado el pasado y tu destino.
I'm not following.
A idea sencilla matar al hombre que abrió un portal temporal y te envió al pasado, lo cual impidió que eso jamás ocurriera.
So you're saying, because a man from 2,000 years ago is dead, he never created a time portal, so I never went through it, and that's why I don't remember any of this.
Ahora lo entiendo.
I guess you saved my life then, as well as helping that poor woman to escape. That's a lot to take in.
Basta de chachara, ¿por qué no nos largamos de aquí?
Maybe we can escape through the same aqueduct Scintilla used, if we can find it.
Está aquí, Naranjibe, sígueme. Vale, ¿dónde está? Por aquí. Vuelve al río. ¿Qué haces?
I'm gonna pause here for a moment and make sure nobody else has ever loaded into this temple.
Buena idea.
You go on ahead. I'll be there soon.
Bueno, y aquí es donde empezamos.
You're back.
Caronte.
You're
O Karen.
alone. Does that mean you didn't find Al?
Lo he encontrado, llegará en un momento.
Oh, what a relief. Thank you so much. I was beginning to think you'd both become trapped in there. Why don't you tell me what you discovered while we wait?
He descubierto que tu nombre real es Caronte. ¿O era Kerti?
Ah, I see.
Dios, qué miedo.
I thought you might. Well, now you know. I suppose you have questions.
¿Quién eres?
You can just call me Carol, if you like. I'm sorry I was not completely honest with you when we first met. I do not enjoy deceiving people. Believe me, I do not. But I have learned, from 5,000 years of experience, that most people find comfort in familiarity, in gradual change, and coming to see the truth in their own time.
¿Cuál es esa verdad?
That you died, of course. You were dead when I brought you here. My role, as the servant of the god of the underworld, has always been to assist the chosen to cross the threshold from the land of the living to the land of the dead.
Ese es Sergio. Muchas gracias por la raid, tío. Es de 17. Qué grande eres, tío. Qué grande. ¿Cómo he muerto?
Usually, when people do not remember how they died, it is because they suffered a terrible trauma. Most souls would rather not remember.
Ese es Sergio Grande.
Ask
Buenas
yourself
noches.
honestly.
Bueno, te recomiendo, si quieres jugar este juego, que te vayas corriendo, porque esto es uno de los finales y te vas a spoilear. Y el juego es muy recomendable. Esto fue un mod de Skyrim en su hace tiempo, pero lo han sacado como un juego independiente. Es como una especie de aventura gráfica moderna. Y está muy, muy, muy chula la historia. Es muy, muy, muy guapa. Muy recomendado. Ok. Muchas gracias por la raid, Un abrazo, tío. No sé, ¿por qué me ha preguntado? Sí,
As
quiero
you
saber.
wish.
Me
You were
asesinaron,
murdered.
tío.
You were exploring an old tomb when you discovered
O sea, que éramos
a cache of
explorador.
forgotten relics, including 2 silver coins of ancient origin. Unfortunately, as you emerged into daylight, you were set upon by 2 thieves. A nearby hiker saw the scuffle break out and leapt to your aid, trying to help you recover your bounty. You both fought bravely, but your assailants were armed, and you were not. There was nothing you or your ally could have done. He died instantly at the scene, and you followed a few hours later. That man's name was Al Worth.
Me perdí, gente.
You were each in possession of a sacred coin, called Karen's
El óvulo de
Opal
Karen.
by some. And so it was my duty to bring you here.
¿Qué tienen de especial estas monedas?
Perhaps you have heard the tales of the Greeks and Romans burying their dead with a
Si
coin.
todo esto ya me lo han explicado. El pagar al barquero con ese tipo de
for
moneda.
passage across the river. Well, those stories contained a seed of truth, but not any coin would do. A long time ago, my master created 1,000 silver coins
1000 monedas de plata.
and had me distribute them.
Curioso,
across
todos
the
pedían
world.
1000 denarios.
My orders were simple. Whenever a person died in possession of a coin, I was to locate them and ferry them here.
¿Por qué?
That is a question you would have to ask him, if that were still possible, in light of the path you have chosen. I am just his servant, doing his bidding. Only now, I find myself bereft of purpose. You see, the coins on you and Al were the last of the 1,000 in existence. There is nobody else to ferry here, nobody to keep you company. After 5,000 years, the underworld has finally run its course.
¿Puedes devolvernos a la tierra de los vivos?
I see no point in keeping you here, but I have to ask one thing: that you keep this to yourself.
Look! Here comes Al now. Al! It's so good
Vamos
to
a hacer
see
la,
you. You
la
were gone so
despistada.
long I thought I'd never see you again.
Kinda lost track of time in there. You wouldn't believe what we found. The ruins of a long-forgotten city. And there was a tablet describing an event 2,000 years ago. Supposedly, the city was destroyed when a woman murdered a tyrant with the help of, well, my new friend here. I know how crazy that sounds.
Maybe not that crazy. That woman. I don't suppose her name was Scintilla?
How could you... What?
She left a tablet of her own. I stumbled across it while I was waiting here. I think she meant for you to read it. Here, take a look.
I don't know what became of you, or if you'll ever read this, but I want you to know that I will never forget you, or what you did for me. It pains me that so many dear friends were not so fortunate. Ulpius, Sentia, Lucretia, Horatius, Galerius, poor Dooley, and the others. But please understand, their blood is on my hands, not yours. I will live with the consequences of my actions, and all I can do is move forward, trying to show others the same compassion you showed me. I promise you that saving my life will not be for nothing. Scintilla.
Sounds like you meant a lot to her. I'd love to hear your story, but first, you two look exhausted. Why don't you hop in my boat and rest while I ferry you back to civilization?
Sounds good to me.
And you? Are you ready to go home?
Muy bien, Caronte, llévanos a casa. ¿Y volvemos al mundo de los vivos? Final 2 de 4. Ah, vale. Hemos elegido... Hay uno primero. ¿Veis? ¿Veis que hay uno primero? Antes. En la línea temporal será, ¿no? Luego 3 y el 4. Final 2 de 4. Juegazo, qué juegazo, tío. Vale, pero bueno, hay que sacar el otro, el más complejo, que es el de las placas, ¿no? Estará el de las placas y luego el de la voz que susurraba y todo el rollo este, ¿no? Y esto lo hicieron entre 3 personas, tío. ¿Sabes? Bueno, al final le han ayudado, ¿no? A la gente, pero... El mod lo hicieron primeramente 3 personas durante un montón de años. No sé si me da la oportunidad de empezar desde allí o no. No, ¿verdad? Y si le doy a continuar, ¿dónde me deja? Vamos a ver. Justo aquí. Vale. Vamos a pasar todo esto. ¿Quién te ha hecho esto? Lo siento, pero si dejo que te vayas, todos morirán.
What? No. You can't just leave me here. How can you be so heartless?
Vamos a ver, esto priorizará la nueva misión y mostrará solo los marcadores de objetivos relacionados. Vale. Es demasiado peligroso, déjame ver si puedo convencer a Asencio de que nos deje marcharnos. Cruel no, solo racional, no merece la pena escapar de aquí. Si a cambio tienen que morir todos los demás. He cambiado de opinión, vale. Cruel no, solo racional.
I hate you. I spit on you. I hope this drags you to Tartarus.
Enfréntate a Asencio en relación a su secuestro de Sencila. Sencilla o Sencila, Sentila, o como le pronuncien.
You're back.
Ah, mira, le puedo dar otra vez el esto.
What?
Es demasiado peligroso. Déjame ver si puedo convencer a Asencio.
It's no use. You'll never persuade him of anything. I'm telling you, he's a monster. Please.
Tengo que intentarlo.
You're making a mistake.
Vale, lo podemos intentar. Se puede intentar. ¿Cómo salía yo de aquí? Vale, he subido por aquí. Pero si no tengo la llave no voy a poder salir por aquí. A ver, aquí hay una puerta. No podemos. Vale, pues tengo que volver. Oh, ¿me puedo tirar o no? Tírate al agua, coño. Pero tírate al agua, hostia, bueno, estoy vivo. Viva. Vale, ¿cómo salía de aquí, tío? No sé salir de aquí, gente, no me acuerdo. Es por aquí. Todavía estás explicando cosas. Madre mía. ¿No se pueden hacer los 4 finales juntos o tienes que ser de uno en uno? Será de uno en uno, supongo. Vale. Vamos a guardar antes de hablar con él. No sea que la jodamos. ¿No? Esta es la parte de arriba. Sé dónde está tu hermana.
Oh, don't mind me. I just live here. Oh, I wish
We're finally alone. I assume you already know who I am.
Vale.
I must have entrusted you. Is that about right?
Vale, no puedo evitar que se rompiera. Vale. Aquí. Sé lo que hiciste a Sencilla. O Sencilla o Sentila. No lo quiero poner. La tienes atada en el aljibe.
You know, you remind me of him.
¿A quién?
Al Worth. The fellow who came through the portal before you.
Claro, todo esto lo voy a pasar porque es lo mismo, ¿eh?
You were the only one here. You see, my connection to the portal somehow. But I'm surprised you hadn't noticed. Here I was thinking you were a little. He was a moralistic, and because of that fatal flaw, I watched him come through the portal each time. And when he finally saw the next, because so.
Sabía que había una forma de escapar y hasta encerraste a tu propia hija para mantenerlo en secreto. ¿Por qué?
Why? Isn't it obvious?
Vale, es lo mismo. Sí. Entrega la llave de la salida.
And why would I agree to that?
Si no la entregas puede que causes una rebelión. ¿Y qué impide tomarlo por la fuerza? Esto no se acaba. Si no la entregas puede que causes una rebelión.
You might want to think that through. If anyone so much as touches me, everyone dies.
Es lo correcto.
You and your pathetic morality. Nobody cares about your opinions or what happens, where you're from. Least of all, me. Understand that to me, you've never been anything more than a useful idiot. And you're no longer useful.
¿Y quién pide tomarlo por la
fuerza? The only way you're getting this key is over my dead body. If I die, I won't be able to open the portal for you again, meaning you'll have created a paradox. You see, it was my actions that brought you to this point in time. So if you kill
pues vamos a quitarle lo que más quiere, su vida de magistrado.
And you being here will be an impossibility. That means if I die, you'll be flung back to your original time, having caused the deaths of everyone here, and you'll never be able to undo it. Is that what you want? I certainly hope not. In fact, I want it to go on and on forever, until you wither and die like Al did, and the gods sent yet another useful idiot to extend my life for me.
Encontrar una manera de destruir el ciclo y a ti con él.
What are you going to do? Beg the gods for help? They don't care about you, and neither do I. Now, get out of my villa. I'm bored with you. Are they?
A ver, quiero salir de aquí. Vale, solo me queda esto. Vale. Vamos a hacer esto, gente. Vale, tenemos que hablar con Equicia.
Don't believe a word they tell you.
That's quite an impressive birth. A new face. Ave, and may that... Oh. As I... If... Truly.
He encontrado la forma de escapar, vale.
Truly? Then why are you still here?
Porque ese camino acarreará la muerte de casi todo el mundo y no quiero eso.
Ah, I see. Then it seems you have made a great sacrifice for all of us, friend. I admire your compassion. Truly. Thank you. But unfortunately, I'm afraid your only other option will be to confront you know who.
Vale.
May fortune.
Vale, pero espérate que tengo que hacerte lo de
again.
las selecciones.
As I said, I'm planning to...
Va. Venga. Todo el mundo a votar, vamos. Rapidito. A ver si no la lía ahora otra vez el legionario ese. Gente del maleolo ese. Venga, vamos todos para allá. Es que no me queda nada por hacer y necesito que Galerio salga elegido, gente. Hombre, ahora sí que tendrá votos. Mira qué rápido va el cabrón. Vale. Vale, a este le han salvado, a este también. A este también, o sea que van a votar a todos a Galerio, ¿no? Claro, porque le he dicho yo que hiciese todo lo que he hecho yo. Y Horacio, bueno, Horacio estaba con este. No sé si tenía que haber hablado yo con alguno.
Citizens, we have a quorate body of voters gathered here to elect the city's magistrate. The candidates are Sextus Sentius Imperiosus and late nominee Gallus Galerius Helva. Marcus Malleolus Gurges withdrew his candidacy earlier today. As agreed, we shall dispense with ballots and candidates will abstain from voting. Let's make this quick. As I say your name, call your vote. I'll start with you, Horatius.
Sentius, of course.
Georgius.
Galerius. He saved the life of my dear friend Fabia.
Dacius.
Sentius.
Virgil.
The man who put a stop to the threats I've been receiving. Galerius.
Ulpius.
Galerius, the man who saved my life.
Rufius.
The man who treated my rheumatism.
¡Hemos ganado las elecciones!
¡Sí! Citizens, you have made your decision. Your new magistrate is Gallus Galerius Helva.
What?
Vale, si gana Galerio no viene el maleolo ese.
Magistrate Galerius, would you like to make a brief address?
Este estará que trina, cabrón. ¿Qué? Ahora puedes revivir todos los putos días, cabrón.
This isn't something I ever wanted. Now that you put your trust in me, I'm going to do everything I can not to let you down. I'll need some time to put together a list of the changes I want to make around here. But I promise you, there will be changes. My first order is that Dooley is to be freed. Horatius, release him from his cell immediately. Please. Wait, do I need to say please? I suppose not. That's it. You can all get on with your day. Nothing else to see here. Move along.
Vale, está ocupado de momento. Para ver cómo llegaba yo al sitio. Voy a seguir a estos. Esto cuanto para el foro.
Blood Galerius won.
It gladdens my heart that Galerius set poor Dooley free.
¿Me oyes? Sí, te oigo. Pues con el susurro de los huevos. Vale, aquí. Abre la puerta. Vamos.
Fortune smiles on you today, Julius. Magistrate Galerius here has ordered your release.
You're going to let me out of here?
I'm sorry it took so long, my friend. And it wouldn't have happened at all if it wasn't for a newcomer. So be sure to offer your thanks when you can.
I will. I will. Thank you, Galerius. I'm so happy.
I'd love to stay and chat, but I've got a lot of work ahead of me. Why don't you go to the baths? Then tell Georgius I said you could have some new clothes. Then I want you to go home and rest. I'll speak with you soon, Dooley.
Me tienes que dar una llave.
Hello? I'm Dooley. Magistrate Galerius said I should thank the newcomer. Are you the newcomer?
Sí.
Oh, it is you. Then, thank you. You're a big helper. I was locked up, but they let me out again. I'm so happy. You can have my shiny plaque if you want, and maybe you can help me find my treasure. My friend Hannibal used to look after me, and he said he always would, but then he died. But before that, he told me if anything ever happened to him, I had to find something very precious.
¿Qué era?
He gave me a key to the cisterns and told me to keep it safe. He said there's something very precious way up high.
Vale, esto ya me lo
Please
dijo.
help me find it.
Te ayudaré. Y me da la llave, vale.
Hope you find it.
Abre el aljibe superior con la llave de Dooley. Entonces podemos abrir la puerta de arriba del todo.
Hannibal said. Oh, look over there. Maybe it is treasure.
Vale, y la tabla.
I can see it for myself.
Ya tenemos todas las tablas. Voy a hacer un guardado aquí. ¡Ay! No, no, no. A ver. Encontrar la placa griega, vale. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa?
The many shall suffer for the sins
¿Qué ha pasado?
of the one.
¿Qué ha pasado? ¿Pero qué ha pasado? Vale, ¿qué es lo que ha pasado? ¿Qué ha pasado, gente? ¿Qué ha pasado? Corre, pollito. ¿Quién ha incumplido la regla? ¿Este? Que ha llenado un... no sé. ¿Qué ha pasado? No sé lo que ha pasado. ¿Quién ha cometido...? Vale, ¿quién cojones...? Se va a romper la regla de oro dentro de poco. Necesito que le digas a todos, excepto a Sencio, que se preparen para entrar rápidamente en el aljibe superior cuando el suelo empiece a derrumbarse. Ah, vale.
What? That's a big ask. But something tells me you're not kidding. All right, I'm gonna stick my neck out and believe you. But I doubt I'll be able to gather more than a handful of people.
No sé si tendría que haberle dicho de salvar primero. Es que... A ver. Espérate. Espera. Voy a ver si puedo decirle primero una cosa y luego la otra. A ver si puedo salvarlos a todos o no. O no sé. ¿Dónde he salvado este?
I could see it for myself. So pretty. And it's just lying out here.
Ah, que está robando el cabrón.
Maybe nobody wants it anymore.
Claro, va a robar algo.
Maybe no one will mind if I just take it.
Don't you dare.
The many
¿Pero
shall
qué he guardado
suffer
aquí? ¿No he guardado
for the
ahí?
sins of the one.
Pero no he guardado ahí, tío, gente. A ver. Bueno, no sé, da igual, lo vuelvo a repetir. No sé. Vamos a ver si puedo guardar antes de hablar con Galerio. Claro, es Dulio, roba. Claro. Estaba todo mal hecho, claro. Si yo sabía que digo, si este va a robar, la hemos liado. Al final veré el final. Valga la redundancia, ¿no? Yo me estoy perdiendo hasta el Madrid, tío. Bueno, veré la segunda parte. Si me da tiempo. No quiero saber el resultado. Vale, voy a guardar aquí. Vale.
Oh. Yulia. All right.
Vale, pero...
I'll go, but once I'm...
Pero si hago esto, ¿cómo le digo lo de las sentines ahora? ¿Y si la dejo abierta primero? Mientras que él hace las cosas.
You, Sisyphus, attack or pursue the stone.
A ver. Voy a ver si puedo llegar hasta allí. Lo que pasa es que este me va a dar la chapa. A ver.
Hey, you're not thinking about going into the cistern, are you?
0-1 para el Madrid, minuto 4. Joder, te he dicho que no me dejes hacer nada. Bueno, ahora ya que ahora te he dicho quién ha marcado. Joder, que se me olvida este. Nada. Vale. Joder, ¿cómo llegaba hasta allí? Si está al principio, pasa que lo paso a largo. Es aquí. Hay que hacerlo otra vez. Hostia, hay que hacerlo todo otra vez. Ahí estamos arriba. Ahora esta está aquí, pero voy a pasar de ella. Y se supone que tengo la llave esta, ¿no? Ah, no, ¿quién me da la llave? ¿Quién me daba la llave? Hostias, ¿quién me ha dado la llave antes, tío? ¿Quién me ha dado la llave del aljibe, tío? Ah, me la ha dado Dulio. ¿Y no la tengo? ¿O es esta la que tengo yo? Ah, es esta. Ay, cuidado, ¿eh? Ah, pero esto debe ser un final también. Esto debe ser el final de pasármelo yo solo. Ah, no, he abierto esto. Pero si, pues si van al mismo sitio. Ah, que era esta puerta. Vale, ¿habrá hablado ya con todo el mundo? Este hombre, no lo sé. No sé por dónde va. Hola, Octavia. Que me mato. ¿No tengo la tirolina o qué, tío? Ah, tío, no se me activa la tirolina, tío. Yo una vez metí un gol, ahora para atrás en Madrid. Vale, no sé si habrá terminado Galerio de hacer sus cosas que le hemos mandado. Por ahí va corriendo Ulpio, ¿no? Vale, Galerio. Vale, voy a seguir a Galerio.
Citizen.
¿Está ya? ¿Ha terminado?
Just released us and we never have to set foot in that villa again.
What? How?
Galerius arranged it somehow.
Really? That's incredible. Oh, what a relief. I don't know what to say.
You don't need to say anything. Just rest up, get your strength back, and we'll celebrate properly when you're ready.
I will. Thank you, Obvious.
A lo mejor hay que esperar a que termine la cena entre Ulpio y Julia. No puedo hablar con él, ¿eh? Vale, pues no sé. Pues lo haremos de otra manera. Espérate.
Don't believe a word they tell you.
Yo creo que lo habrá hecho todo ya, ¿no? A ver, Rufio lo habrá hecho ya.
Citizen. Name's Rufius. No idea what you... It's the rheumatism. It starts with... I know, that's...
Vale, sí, se lo tiene hecho ya, vale. Vale, pero no se queda aquí. O sea, que no puedo hacerlo así de esta manera. O sea, es que no sé. Tendría que hacer otra vez las elecciones, todo el rollo. No, automático no. Manual, por favor. ¿Es este? ¿Dónde está, tío? ¿Este? Pero ¿por qué me marca este, tío? Este no es, tío. ¿O es que lo sobreescribe, tío? Ah, es que no sé, no entiendo. A ver. ¿Dónde me deja, tío? ¿Dónde ha guardado este? ¿Dónde estoy? Ah, mira lo del obelisco. Vale, pero... si yo lo que quiero es... Vamos a ver. No sé, ¿dónde está ese puto guardado? Que me estoy volviendo loco. Aljibes, ciudad. Es que no sé dónde es. ¿Lo he sobrescrito o algo? No sé lo que he hecho. ¿Dónde me deja? Aquí, bien, bien, bien. Es esta.
What?
Vale, entonces... mientras que te va a intentar salvar a tu Dios, yo voy a ir a abrir la puerta.
You, Tantalus.
Me he quemado. Mickey Mouse.
Fear is proof.
Hey, Horatius. How's it feel knowing your man's doomed to lose the election? Hey, you're not thinking about going into the cistern, are you?
Vale. Sacar arco. Esta vez sí que me acuerdo. Mierda. Cago en 10. Mira, bicho. ¿Dónde es, tío? Siempre me confundo. A ver. O sea, aquí al principio. A ver, aquí, ¿no? Aquí. Vale. Vale, ya está todo abierto. Voy a intentar hacer una cosa. Es que ya que lo tengo abierto, voy a guardar aquí. Calla, calla, calla. No sé, ya hemos tenido esta conversación antes.
What? God, am I going out of my mind? Are you going to let me go or not?
Le he dicho a Valerio que traiga aquí a todo el mundo cuando se rompa la regla de oro, para que ellos también puedan escapar.
How did you know? Wait, did you hear that? He's here. He must be coming in through the door behind me. You distract him. Stay right here and keep him.
Ay, no, pero si hago esto lo vamos a matar. Ah, tío. No se puede. Lo va a matar.
What did you do with Scintilla? Where is she? So, you discovered my secret. So what? What are you going to do about it?
Te dije que te partiría en dos. O bueno, lo podemos hacer todo junto ahora, ¿no?
I have found a way to prolong my life.
Ay, no puedo cortar esto, gente.
To cheat death. I have become ineffective.
Claro, porque ahora cuando lo haga ella es como si nos salvásemos los dos, pero ahora va a venir todo el mundo, ¿no? Es decir, que me pediste que averiguara quién iba a romper la regla de oro.
By reliving the same day over and over again forever. And I will continue living long after your dust.
Vendrás a la muerte. A ver cómo sale esto mediante el engaño. Podría, pero le dije que es. Le dejaré salirse con la suya.
I'm right here, father.
Vale. Entonces supuestamente ahora nos vamos a escapar todos, ¿no?
The many shall suffer for the sins of the one.
Come on, we have to go. The other should be right behind us.
Claro, ahora vamos todos.
Hey, what's happening to you? That light, it's so bright.
Este es otro final, ¿no? Ahora, pero esta conversación ya la hemos tenido, joder.
Hi there. Give me a bit of a... Well... Funny...
De hecho, era yo, cuando llegué aquí por primera vez, el presidente... Ya tengo de suicidio. No escribió de ti.
So you're saying,
matar al hombre que abrió un portal
because a
por ahí
man
envió el
from
pasado.
2,000 years ago is dead, he never created a time portal, so I never went through it, and that's why I don't...
Ahora lo
I
entiendo.
guess you saved my life then, as well as helping a bunch of others
Vale,
to
y hemos
escape.
salvado a todo el mundo. O a casi todo.
A lot to take in.
Basta de chachara, ¿por qué no nos largamos de aquí?
Maybe we can escape through the same aqueduct Centilla used, if we can find it.
Vale, pues por aquí. Vale, ahora supuestamente hemos conseguido otro final.
I'm gonna pause here for a moment.
Vale, esto lo está chapando.
You're back. But you're alone. Does that mean you didn't find out?
I see. I thought you might. Well, now you know. I suppose you have questions. You can just call that. Usually, most souls would ask you.
Esto ya me lo ha contado. ¿Qué tiene de especial esta moneda? ¿Por qué? ¿Puedo devolver a la tierra a los
I
vivos?
see no point in keeping you here. But I have to ask one thing. That you keep this to yourself.
Look! Here comes Al now. Al! It's so good to see you. You were gone so...
Kinda lost track of time, and there was a tablet, supposedly. My new friend here, I know how...
Maybe not that crazy. She left a tablet of her own. I think she meant for you to read it.
Vale, la tabla no sé si era
Here,
igual.
take a look.
I don't know what became of you, or if you'll ever read this. But Octavia, Lucretia,
A ver, no sé qué ha sido de ti o si le
Epiphania,
pero Octavia,
I'll never forget you.
Lucrecia,
Or
Horacio,
what you did for
Equicia,
us.
yo nunca te olvidaremos
It
de lo
pains
que hiciste por
us that
nosotros.
so many of our dear friends were not so fortunate, including
Muchos de
Ulpius and
mis
Galerius,
amigos
who
no corrieron la misma
heroically tried
suerte.
to
Entre ellos
rescue
Ulpio y
Dooley.
Galerio, quienes intentaron
but never
rescatar a
made it
Dooley, pero nunca
There was no
regresaron.
point dwelling on
No
what
tiene
might
sentido
have
afligirse
been.
por lo que podría haber pasado.
All we can
Lo único que
do
podemos
is
hacer es
take
aceptar
this
este
gift
regalo
you've
que
given
nos ha
us
dado e intentar
and
mostrar
try
hacia
to
los
show
demás la
others
misma
the
compasión
same
que tú nos mostraste.
compassion
Te
you showed
prometemos
us.
que
We
habernos salvado
promise you
la vida
that
no fue
saving our
algo
lives
sencillo.
was not for nothing. Scintilla et al.
Bueno, pues no pudieron salvarse Ulpio, Galerio y Dooley.
Sounds like you meant a lot to her. I'd love to hear your story, but first, you two look exhausted.
Sounds good to me.
And you?
Vale. Otro final. Este era el final 3. Vale, yo creo que el 1 es el de la voz o algo así, o como no sé. Hay algo más que no sé, que me he pasado yo. Hay un final que me he pasado. Vale, ahora solo me queda poner... El último no, pero tiene que faltar 2, ¿no? Gol de Bale. Vale, a esta todavía no hablo con ella, porque si hablo con ella ya sería el final. Hostia, no veo nada, tú. ¿Hola? ¿Qué cojones? Ahora. Vale, yo dejo la puerta abierta por si acaso. Vale, y no he hablado con ella, porque en cuanto hables con ella ya se va toda la mierda, ¿no? Vale, lo que podemos hacer es ir al obelisco. ¿Pero dónde está el obelisco, tío? Porque antes me ha dejado al lado del obelisco y no sé dónde está el obelisco. ¿Dónde hostia está el obelisco, tío? ¿Está por aquí el obelisco? Ah, aquí. Al lado.
Salve, friend. I'm Octavia. Well. All right. Well, it was lovely to meet you. I look forward to getting to know you better over the coming months. And if you ever...
Que sí, que sí.
Oh no. No. No, 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 no. Orpheus, what are you doing? Get back from there.
¿Pero qué haces aquí
If
ahora?
you lose your balance, you'll fall.
That's the idea.
What? Why? Why would you want that?
Why do you think I'm stuck for the rest?
I know, please.
I'm sorry, but
Please, help him.
Hablaré con él.
Thank...
You know about that? How is that
Pero
possible?
vamos a ver,
I mean, I've
muchacho,
never mentioned it to anyone.
quítate de ahí el borde. Pero es que no le da tiempo ah, claro, porque como a Galerio le he dicho lo otro, no le he dicho lo de salvarle. Le he dicho que reúna a toda la gente posible en lo de el aljibe.
Well, if you say so. You don't understand. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want it all to be over.
Quizás pueda resolver tu problema.
It's too late for that. Yulia and I made a pact. And she's already swallowed hemlock this morning.
Claro, si es que
If I backed
está
out
muerta
now,
también
I'd be
aquella.
betraying her. I can't do that.
¿Y si yo también puedo ayudarla?
No. Time's up. I am out.
Bueno,
wherever you are, Scintilla, my love. I'm sorry.
Orpheus, no!
Vale.
I can't believe he went through with it. Oh Lord. That poor lamb.
Vamos a ver. A ver, como ese final ya lo hemos hecho. Quizás deberíamos cargar la partida. Pero anterior. Esta. ¿Es esta? A ver. ¿Es esta? Esta es. Entonces, como ya he hecho ya ese final, no le digo esto. Ahora le digo esto. Corre a hacer todo lo que tengas que hacer. Y yo me voy a ir a tomar por culo. Tengo que ir a lo del obelisco, gente. Vale. El obelisco es ahí, arriba. Vale. Mientras que Galerio va haciendo sus cosas, no va a morir nadie. ¿No? ¿Y cómo subo hasta allá arriba? Que no me acuerdo. Joder, por aquí no. No sé si tengo que hablar con Equicia de todo esto, tío. Antes que nada.
Don't believe a word they tell you.
Me faltaría un final, ¿no? El 1. El 1 de 4. El primero de todos. Que no sé cómo sería. Di su nombre. Hades, señor de muchos, concédeme una audiencia. Nergal, el fiel, concédeme una audiencia. Osiris, señor de silencio, concédeme una audiencia. Plutón. Vale, a ver. El griego, el sumerio, el egipcio y el romano. Pero tendré que decir el romano, ¿no? Porque ¿o qué? O no sé. Da igual, ¿no? O a lo mejor da igual. Ah, tengo que decírselos todos. No, esta no se ha abierto. Me tengo que fijar a lo mejor en la decoración o algo. No me da cuenta. ¿Osiris? Tampoco. Nergal. Venga, Hades. Claro, debe ser eso. Vale. Esto es egipcio, gente. Esto es egipcio. No hay duda. Vale. Vale, solo me quedará Nergal. Debe ser los sumerios. Hostia puta, ¿esto qué es? ¿Dónde estoy? ¡Oh! ¡Oh! ¡Hostia! ¿Esto qué es, tío, loco? Hostia, mira ahí el planeta Tierra, tú. ¿Qué cojones?
And here you are. Allow me to introduce myself. As you have already gathered, I've been known by many names. Nergal to the Sumerians, Osiris to the Egyptians, Hades to the Greeks, and Pluto to the Romans. But the one constant through it all has been my title, God of the Underworld. And I've been watching you with curiosity, mortal, ever since your arrival. You're unlike the others, aren't you? And what is more, you carry a weapon that was never intended for mortals to wield, and you do it so brazenly that there will be time for your reckoning later. First, as a reward for undoing the desecration of my obelisk, I will allow you to satisfy your curiosity. Ask what you will.
Vale, ¿cuál es tu historia? Como a todo el mundo, ¿no?
Many thousands of years long. You will need to be more specific. What do you wish to know?
¿Eres un dios?
It is a matter of perspective. God is a label I was given by immortals, not what I gave myself. Your ancestors revered me because to them, my knowledge and technology made me incompetent.
¿Cómo te mató? Si no alguna pregunta así, ¿no?
Just as you might seem so to an insect. But despite all that, there are rules even I must obey.
¿Por qué pareces un hombre y hablas como un hombre?
My kin and I all adopted this form long ago, so that we might better understand and communicate with your kind. In time, we grew fond of the sensory delights it affords: desire, joy, ecstasy, even rage and sorrow, while an acquired taste can be addictive.
¿Me dejas ver tu forma real?
No. Long ago, I swore to Proserpina that I would remain in this form for as long as we remained among your kind. I must honor that.
Vale, ¿quién es la mujer de tu izquierda?
This is my beloved. Like me, she has been known by many names. Q.Skill to the
Sumerians, para los sumerios, Isis para los egipcios, Perséfone para los griegos y Proserpina para los romanos.
Or perhaps you might know her as the goddess of springtime, the cycle of life and renewal.
Vale, no puedes hablar de los
Your gaze
susurros.
lingers too long.
¿Quién se encuentra a tu derecha?
That is my servant. You would have met by the river, though she wears many faces and goes by many names.
Es Caronte, ¿no?
Tubal to the Sumerians, Curti to the Egyptians, Charon to the Greeks, and Charon to the Romans. Her role is to ferry souls between the mortal world and this one, and to make their transition as seamless as possible. For that, she earned herself the infamous, if erroneous, moniker, the Ferryman. You will talk more later. For now, ask your questions.
Vamos a hablar de otra cosa.
As you wish.
¿Qué es este lugar?
It has come to be known simply as the Underworld, and it exists because of a wager I made long ago.
¿Cuál fue esa apuesta?
That is a long story, one that began over 3,000 years ago and continues to this day. You see, long ago my kin and I set out from our home on Elysium to search for other forms of life among the stars. We discovered your planet and witnessed your kind evolving from primates into something lawless and barbaric. You all but destroyed yourselves, your 2 short lives being extinguished by violence and ignorance and disease. Yet Proserpina saw raw potential in you, and persuaded the rest of us it would be squandered without our intervention and stewardship.
Qué historia más original,
So we revealed ourselves to your people in a place called Sumer. We offered guidance in agriculture, toolcraft, and law, and you called us gods. For a time you flourished, but soon you were too many for us to oversee. And as you spread from that cradle of civilization, we saw something disturbing. We had sown the seeds of dependency and confusion, and soon you returned to your old ways of violence and ignorance, this time in our name. My kin had seen enough, and gave up on your kind, condemning you as barbaric and chaotic, scarcely more than animals. We began preparations to return to Elysium, our home world, a utopia unspoilt by conflict and unimaginable in its beauty. But my Proserpina could not bear to abandon your kind without guidance, and knowing it would force the rest of us to leave her behind, she made an extraordinary sacrifice. She gave up her immortality to descend permanently to the ranks of humankind. And so she began her inescapable trajectory toward death. Horrified, I acted swiftly. I placed her in suspended animation in a deep frozen sleep to prevent age and sickness from claiming her. And then I pleaded with Proserpina's father, who the Romans called Jupiter, to bring her with us to Elysium. It was and is my hope that once there, we might one day learn to undo.
Por eso siempre habla por susurros.
But he refused.
Está congelado.
I did everything I could to persuade him, but he would not relent. He would rigidly uphold his final pronouncement. Humans were unworthy of ascension to Elysium, and no exceptions would be made. But seeing that I was aggrieved, he proposed a wager, the terms of which were as follows. If even one human city could prove itself capable of living without sin for a single year, then Proserpina and all of humanity would be permitted to join us in Elysium.
Vaya.
My part would be to remain behind, the last of my kind, to watch over you, without interfering.
Parece un vampiro, sí.
And to sit in silent
Tiene los dientes un poco raro.
And so my reward has been to languish here, enduring a 3,000-year winter, waiting for the day your kind proves itself worthy of her. So that I might take her with me to Elysium and unthaw my goddess of springtime. And here I am, after all this time, still waiting.
¿Quién es tu gente?
There were also gods who, like me, have been known by many names, but perhaps you knew them by their Roman names. Our leader, Jupiter, as well as Neptune, Saturn, Juno, Minerva, Mars, Venus, Apollo, Diana, Vulcan, Vesta, Ceres, and of course, my beloved Proserpina.
Vale, ¿quién construyó la ciudad?
As the first wave of your kind arrived from Sumer, I had them build a city in their own fashion, so that they might be comfortable and recreate their lives here. I had them build the entrance as a vertical shaft leading to baths, to cleanse them of the sins of their former lives, and to prevent escape. I watched wave after wave of Sumerians arrive, and as their civilization declined over the centuries, they were replaced by Egyptians. Of course, believing themselves to be the superior civilization, the Egyptians promptly built over what had been built before. They made all the same mistakes. After another 1,000 years, the Greeks began to arrive, and then the Romans, and they all did the same thing. They built upon the underworlds of their predecessors, renamed their gods, and ensured their foundations were forgotten.
Joder. Bueno, este tiene que ser el final verdadero, porque aquí se explica todo. ¿Cómo decidiste quién vendría aquí?
To ensure the wager was fair, it was important that my subjects were chosen at random.
Por lo de
To this end, I had my servant
las
distribute
1000 monedas de plata estas especiales, ¿no? Eso.
a rare element at the time, across all of Sumer. Whoever died while in possession of one of them would be located by my servant and ferried to this place, with no memory of how they arrived. As the tokens were discovered, they were traded, smelted, and fashioned into trinkets, and eventually coins, spreading to Egypt like seeds on the wind. Later, when they spread to Greece, they would come to be known as Charon's obol, or as coins for the pharaoh. Some placed coins in the mouths of their dead, hoping they would awaken here, though they had no way of knowing which coins were fashioned from the original tokens. In fact, almost all of the tokens are accounted for. Only 2 remain.
Estoy cansadísimo, quiero terminar ya. Llevo 6 horas de directo, tío.
As it is destined to do, your kind will have
Y 4 esta
squandered the
mañana.
last of its potential to ascend beyond this rock, and Proserpina's along with it.
¿Cómo se enteraron los humanos de la existencia del inframundo?
It is a regrettable story. One of the first men who came to this place was the king of Sumer, a troublemaker. To be rid of him, I returned him to his people, on the condition that my servant erased his memories of this place. But the erasure did not take completely, and he told stories of this place as if describing memories of a dream. His tales were committed to writing, which came to be known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. These words were twisted and distorted over generations. Later, the Egyptians would adapt Sumer's stories of the underworld, making them wildly intricate and labyrinthine. Their Book of the Dead and Book of Gates bore less and less resemblance to this.
Lo que me gusta mucho de este juego es lo bien
Then, when the Greeks began to arrive, they proved far more.
lo bien estudiado que está todo, o sea, la gente que ha hecho el guión se ha informado muchísimo de la historia real, de todas las mitologías y todo, o sea, flipante. O sea, documentado, quería decir la palabra.
And so from Sumer to Egypt, Greece
Sí, lleva 6 horas, estamos terminando.
All kind has always told each other stories about this place, though each story contained only a seed of truth.
Vamos a hablar de otra cosa.
Of course.
Tú eres el responsable. Vale, la última. ¿Tú eres el responsable de la regla de oro?
That is merely the name your people have given to it, but yes, it is my doing.
¿Por qué convertir a la gente en oro?
That is a story dating back to the very first wave. After the Sumerians finished building their city, the self-declared ruler threw a banquet to celebrate. Now this man was unmarried, and many women were vying to become his wife, a prestigious position of power and influence in the new world. Of all the women, 2 were particularly ambitious. Both were beautiful, and both arrived at the banquet wearing eye-catching dresses and painted faces, their hair woven in elaborate fashion. The first woman, recognizing that she would require an advantage to win the ruler's affection, draped herself in jewelry, ornate necklaces, bracelets and rings fashioned from gold. Seeing this ostentatious display, the second woman grew envious, for she had no such jewelry at her disposal. She prayed aloud to any gods that would listen to cover her in gold. And when her prayer went unanswered, she took matters into her own hands. While the others indulged at the banquet, the second woman summoned the first for a discussion in a quiet place. She checked that nobody was watching and pushed her rival from the top of the ziggurat, where she broke her neck on the rocks below. But I was watching, and I decided to answer her prayer. I took the golden bow left behind by Diana. I shot that woman in the heart, covering her from head to toe in a layer of molten gold. And I left her to stand there, that she might serve as a grim reminder of what befalls those who sin in my domain. But that was not enough, for the entire city was tainted by her sin, and the wager could no longer be won. So I had no choice but to wipe the slate clean. I gilded them all to make way for a new wave, and began the wager again. And to this day, each of them, and all who came after, line the halls of this city, inanimate but conscious, suspended in time with only their sight and hearing preserved, so they may bear witness to and lament the folly of all kind for eternity. Silent golden sentinels.
Es horripilante eso. Así que tú eres el responsable de destrozar todas estas vidas.
I give your kind a second chance at life, as well as ample warning about my law. And when you disobey, and you always disobey, you force my hand, bringing terrible suffering upon yourselves. And so you ask if I am the one destroying your lives. And I say, no, you destroy yourselves. I am merely the means by which you do it.
¿De dónde han salido estos arcos dorados?
When my kin departed, they left behind many relics which I inherited. A consolation prize of sorts. The golden bow originally belonged to one of my kin, who the Romans called Diana. As my collection of golden statues grew, I chose the most ferocious among them, and equipped them each with a duplicate of her bow, and tasked them with hunting down the Forsaken at my behest. They became known simply as Furies.
Joder, ¿qué consideras un pecado?
I've always considered that the cornerstone of morality is the ability to determine right from wrong on one's own. No attempt to lay out rules like your Code of Hammurabi or your 12 Tables of the Roman Republic can ever cover all possible scenarios. This should come as no surprise to you, since the core principle has been expressed in many forms by many of your civilizations. The Egyptians made a rudimentary attempt with do to the doer to make him do. The Greeks refined it with avoid doing what you would blame others for doing. The Roman Stoics added, treat your inferior as you would wish your superior to treat you. Even the so-called cultists hiding among you often say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It is the simplest of concepts, and each one of you is born with the faculties required to apply it to any situation. Yet none of the peoples who expressed this rule were able to uphold it. Curious, is it not?
Parece que tú tampoco la has defendido mucho.
Enough. You clearly know nothing.
¿Cómo se sabe cuando alguien está pecando?
I'm able to commune with all of the statues in the city. Their ears are my ears, and their eyes are my eyes.
¿Pero Serpina está conectada con las estatuas de la misma forma?
If she was still conscious, I suppose she could, but she's not. Why do you ask?
Vale. Por nada.
Then what an odd question.
Sí. He visto cosas terribles que no consideraste pecado. ¿Por qué dejaste que ocurrieran?
Do you plan to speak in sweeping generalizations? Or are you going to give me an example?
No me jodas que han patado el levante. Cago en 10. A ver, suicidio.
I've seen no such thing, but in any case, taking one's own life is a self-directed act. It is not one that is done to others, however they may be affected by it. Therefore, it cannot be said that one who commits suicide has done anything unto others.
Vale. Vale.
Now tell me, what other sins do you believe I have overlooked?
Un precio exorbitado por una medicina que salva vidas.
The merchant. How is that inconsistent with the rule I've outlined?
No querría que otra persona pidiera un precio exorbitante por la medicina que necesitaba si se estaba muriendo.
I disagree. Having watched this merchant, that is precisely what he would expect from others, and he would be quite capable of paying the price anyway.
No sabes lo que esperas, son solo especulaciones.
Applying this rule always requires speculation to some degree. It requires us to ask what another person would want if they found themselves in another situation.
¿No significa eso que es inherentemente subjetiva y poco fiable?
Not if we're wise enough to know the mind of man.
¿Y crees que sabes lo que piensa el resto de la gente?
Supposing you're right, and my law has been broken, and I should turn you all to gold immediately. Is that what you want?
No, por supuesto que no, no importa.
Now tell me, what other sins do you believe I have overlooked?
Vale, una estafa.
Ah, the tavern keeper, yes. How is that inconsistent with the rule?
No querría que otra persona le vendiera cicutas y pensara que está comprando un medio de huida.
I disagree. Having watched that tavern keeper, that is precisely what she would expect from others. She would view it as a game.
No, me estás aburriendo ya,
Applying this rule always requires. Not if.
Tengo razón.
Then your desire to be right outweighs your desire. You will make a fine statue.
Espérate. Te acabo cabreado, gente. No me jodas. Es la misma, ¿no? A esto. A todo esto. Ah, el arco de madera.
Do you really think you can wound me, a god, with that primitive weapon?
Entrad en mis aposentos, quedaos con mi corona. ¿Qué le digo?
Pathetic.
No, me he confundido.
Many shall suffer for the sins of the one.
Coge la corona de Proserpina. Vale, tengo que volver al principio, gente. Hostias, casi me peina. Hostia, espérate, que tengo que llegar hasta allá, ¿sabes? Mierda, tío, no jodas. ¿Y cómo llego yo hasta allí? ¿Cómo llego allí ahora? ¿Habrá hecho un guardado? No jodas. No, tío, no. Por el amor de Dios.
And here. But he refused to that is a yeah. But my
allá, tía.
But he in my applying.
Bueno, me voy a seguir la corriente un momento.
Now tell me.
Los experimentos de las estatuas doradas.
Now tell.
Vale, secuestro.
You mean the magistrate imprisoning his daughter in the system?
Sí.
He did so because she sought to escape.
Esto es lo de sencilla y sencilla. Vale, lo último, vale. No me extraña que la gente diga que los dioses son crueles. Esto solo demuestra lo poco fiable y subjetivo que es tu código moral. Te cuesta distinguir el bien del mal igual que a cualquier otro humano.
Do you honestly think you could do better?
No, pero a eso me refiero. Nadie tiene una idea tan clara del bien y del mal como para poder confiarle tanto poder. Te has convertido en un tirano.
I should strike you down for that.
Y si lo hicieras, me darías la razón.
Now, did you have any other questions before your reckoning? Very well.
Esas eran todas las preguntas.
Good. Then now it is time for your reckoning. Only, it seems, something is wrong. It has long been within my power to see into the hearts of mortals and weigh their deeds in life. But when I peer into you, I see only a blank slate, as if you did not exist until you appeared in this city. How is this possible? Carol, where did you find this one?
I do not remember ferrying you. How did you come here?
Quizás se te olvidan las cosas con la edad que tienes. Vengo del futuro.
If that is true, then I sense the intervention of someone powerful.
How did you come to be in this time, mortal? Who brought you here?
We cannot know.
Esperaba que me lo dijeras tú.
I do not know. My kin departed long ago, and Proserpine has slumbered for 3,000 years.
No deberías saberlo como dios del inframundo.
Tread lightly, mortal. Enough of this. It seems I will need to put your reckoning on hold for now. But answer this. Why have you come here What is it you seek?
Me gustaría poner el punto y final a la regla de oro.
Your hubris. If you anger me or waste my time with lies or wrong-headed argument. So, tell me, why should I put an end to the so-called golden rule?
Si haces esto por amor, has de saber que Proserpina no te quiere. ¿Cómo pretendes que vivamos sin pecado sin incluso tú puedes hacerlo? La regla de oro está corrompiendo esta ciudad y asegurándose de que nunca ganes la apuesta.
How so? And be specific. You have made a grave allegation, and I expect you to back it up.
A ver, Tessa está poniendo los precios de la medicina por las nubes porque sabe que nadie te puede quitar por la fuerza.
True. I have witnessed it.
Rufio se ha vuelto tan paranoico que se asusta hasta de las sombras como de la sexualidad de Virgilia.
He is a volatile and confused.
Aurelia se aprovecha de la desesperación de la gente para meterles cicuta. Maleolo ha llevado a la gente a servidumbre por deuda, convenciéndolos de que rebelarse iría contra vuestra ley.
His cruelty does seem to grow greater by the day. If you're right, my involvement has corrupted the very thing I sought to observe impartially. But if I were to accept that, are you telling me these humans could coexist peacefully, without theft or violence, without my law?
No, pero los humanos tienen que poder utilizar la fuerza en casos excepcionales para corregir la sociedad.
How so?
Usamos la violencia para evitar los malos comportamientos, para neutralizar a los criminales y para derrocar a los tiranos.
And how is that working for you?
En el lugar del que vengo dentro de 2000 años funciona bastante bien. La esperanza de vida media está en aumento y la delincuencia está disminuyendo.
So you say, and yet your world is still imperfect.
Cada vez es mejor, un día lo conseguiremos. Nuestro mundo siempre será imperfecto, pero la clase de fuerza que se requiere para crear una utopía desembocará en tiranía.
You have spoken eloquently, and yet, if what you say is true, it follows that my wager was fatally flawed from the beginning. But that would mean Jupiter, Proserpina's father, who knew more about you than anyone, posed a wager I could never win. Why would he do that?
A ver. Quizás se sentía amenazado por tu presencia y no quería a ningún posible contendiente en el Elíseo.
Perhaps. And if that was so, surely I would have sensed his deception. How could I have been so blind for so long?
Quizás tu amor por Proserpina te cegó, es algo humano.
Your words sting me, mortal.
Me duele mucho la cabeza ya.
It is what I deserve. As difficult as this is to admit, I have suspected as much for a long time now, and I cannot deny it any longer. I've been so fixated on taking my beloved to Elysium that every time one of you sinned, it wore away my hope of being with her again. In time, I began to despise your kind for making her believe that you could ever be better than you are. But my rage was not born of malice, quite the opposite. Everything I have done, I did because I loved her. Who knew this empathy of yours, which you celebrate so much, could have such a dark underside? This has gone on too long. It is time for me to let go of this form, of her, of all of you. But know this, if I abandon the wager and leave for Elysium, neither she nor your kind may ever ascend.
Me importa un pito el Elíseo, solo queremos volver al mundo.
Very well. I will have Charon make arrangements to ferry the others. But as for you, be aware you will be separated from the rest.
¿Por qué?
Once this exodus begins, the events that brought you to this moment will never have taken place. and you will have created a paradox. What will become of you is difficult to predict, but that is the risk you have taken by interfering in the natural flow of time. Now, are you ready? Farewell.
Ready. Convence al dios del inframundo para abolir la regla de oro. Vale, pues eso salió bien. Pero lo de Proserpina, al final, como lo había hecho antes, lo de la corona, a lo mejor es otro final. Te enfrentas a él, rompes la corona, vuelves otra vez a repetir el día y le enseñas lo de la corona, ¿no?
Oh. Hi there. Gave me a bit of a fright. Thought I was in here alone. I'm Al.
Alworth, he venido en tu busca.
Well, here I am.
Espera, bueno, esto lo mismo de siempre.
You are. Oh, did that lady in the forest send you in here after me? I guess I lost track of time. I'm fairly certain you and I are the first, fortunately.
De hecho, era yo.
What? Oh,
estoy justo detrás de ti. Vale. Vale, pero bueno, me faltaría un final que sería... no sé. A lo mejor si hago lo de la corona... podemos destruirlo, no creo, ¿no? No sé.
You're back.
O convencerlo también con lo de la corona, será eso, no sé.
Does that mean you didn't find Al?
Lo he encontrado, llegaré en un momento.
Oh, what a relief. Thank you so much. Why don't you tell me what you discovered? Well,
he descubierto que no eres quien dijiste ser. Recuerdo haberte conocido hace 2000 años. Eso es diferente.
I see. I thought you might. Well, now you know. I suppose you have questions.
¿Quién
You
eres?
can just call me Carol.
Sí, pues esto ya lo sabemos.
That you died, of course. My rule, as the servant of the god of the...
Como he muerto, esto es lo mismo de siempre, si quiero saberlo. Plutón dijo que mi moneda y la de Al eran las últimas que existían. ¿Eso qué te dice?
It means I am now bereft of purpose.
Vale.
There is nobody else to ferry here. Nobody to keep you company. After 5,000 years, the underworld has finally run its course.
Vale, ya, Fran, me está poniendo nervioso. ¿Qué tienen de especial estas monedas?
Perhaps you have heard the tales of the Greeks.
Bueno, esto ya lo sabemos. Dijo que mi moneda era la última de este tipo. ¿Eso qué te dice?
It means there is nobody else.
Puede volvernos a la tierra de los
I
vivos.
see no point in keeping you here. But I have to ask one thing. That you keep this to yourself.
Look! Here comes Al now. Al! It's so good to see.
Kind of lost track of time. So.
Bueno. Otro final. Un año más tarde. Esto es diferente. Esto debe ser el final verdadero. Sí, porque esto no salió antes.
Hey, you made it. It's great to see you again. I read your book, and what the critics said about it. I guess they weren't ready for your theories about the underworld. Anyway, after everything you've been through, I thought you might appreciate some good news. So after we got back to the real world, I started doing some research into the people mentioned in Galerius's tablet, and I found something strange. I'm sorry I've been so cryptic. I've been dying to tell you, I just really wanted you to see this for yourself. Why don't you head on down there? I'll catch up with you at the other end.
You're here. It's lovely to finally meet you. Galerius told me all about you.
Me alegra verte.
So, you're the hero who somehow vanquished the last of the Roman gods. As I'm a priestess, you realize you've put me out of work. I'm just teasing. Actually, and it still feels a little sacrilegious to say this, I'm finding life after religion quite enjoyable.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
Galerius and I are engaged and expecting. We've just bought a lovely villa in the countryside with room for a large family, and Dooley too, of course. It feels like the world has just opened up for us. There's so much to learn, and so many more possibilities for our children than we ever imagined. We're just so thankful for what you did for us, for all of us.
¿Cómo está Livia?
Oh, it's sweet of you to ask. She recovered nicely. In fact, she's here somewhere, if you'd like to ask her yourself.
Gracias. Me alegra verte de nuevo, X.
See you soon, I hope.
¡Hombre! Mr. Proper, ahí está.
You're finally here. Remember me?
Valerio,
It's
amigo.
a crazy story. After you disappeared, Charon appeared and told us she was returning us to the world. Even gave us some coins to help us start our lives over. Only, for some reason, she returned us to your world instead of ours. Anyway, I know we only ever had that one conversation, and I wasn't even sure if you'd remember me, but I wanted to say thanks for freeing us from the underworld and giving us a second chance at life. Oh, I used Charon's gift to buy a farm in Umbria. Got a villa on it too, with enough room for Dooley, of course. It's hard work, but I sleep soundly every night. I'm finally my own man, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
¿Estás ahora con X?
I know. I can't believe my luck either. But we're engaged and living together. We're planning to get married next spring. If you're going to be around, we'd love to see you there.
Me encantaría. Me alegra verte visto.
Of course. There's a whole museum full of people waiting for a chance to thank you. So
Vale.
you better keep moving. We'll speak again soon, my friend.
4 finales. Ahí.
Oh, hello.
Hombre, Dooley.
Hello. I'm Dooley.
Y recuerdo que
Galerius said you're very nice and a big helper.
Este voy a pasarlo rápido porque habla muy lento. ¿Qué es de tu vida?
I live at Galerius.
Vivo en la casa de Galerio, X, además me cuiden y me ayudan a recordar cuando me olvido las cosas como de cepillarme los dientes. Siento que no hayas encontrado tu tesoro. ¿Tesoro? Ah, ya me había olvidado, me gusta mi caja. Galerio me dio una caja que cuenta historias, es mi objeto favorito. Me alegra verte feliz.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
There she is.
It's you.
Mira, el horario. Julia.
You're the Oracle, right?
Fosforial está bien.
Sorry. And I never got a chance to thank you for telling Galerius how to save my life. And of course, getting me and all of us out of a terrible situation.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
Oh, I barely recognize myself. I'm living in a house share in London with my wonderful girlfriend. And I'm studying English at university. Eventually, I want to travel the world and write about it. Turns out, it's about 30 times bigger than the Roman Empire ever was. Did you know there are entire continents Rome never knew existed?
Sí.
And you can travel almost anywhere in an aircraft, which is rather like flying on a Pegasus, but much more comfortable. Oh, sorry, you already know all that, of course. I'm just so excited. There's so much to see and learn and write about.
Ver el mundo desde una perspectiva nueva suena maravilloso.
I have noticed people from your time have no idea how fortunate they are. I hope to change that. One day.
¿Qué pasó entre Malleolo y Claudia?
Last I heard, Malleolus kept insisting he was the last rightful ruler of the Roman Empire, and wound up being committed to a psychiatric hospital. As for Claudia, she was always so viciously unhappy. Someone said she'd blown all her money on wine, trying to drink herself back to the underworld. After the horrific way they treated Ulpius and me, I can't help feeling a sense of... what's that German word? Schadenfreude?
Creo que tienes permiso para sentirte
Thank
así.
you. You're very kind.
¿Qué le pasa a Aurelia?
Ugh. Someone told me she was boasting about getting her claws into some rich prince, and how she was going to be living the high life from now on. Even in your time, life still isn't fair. Apparently, he'd proposed before they'd even met. And last I heard, she'd bought herself a first-class one-way ticket to join him in some exotic place called... what was it? Nigeria? Some people have all the luck.
No te preocupes, algo me dice que se va a llevar su merecido.
Well, you are the oracle, so I suppose I'll take your word for it. Huh. I feel better already.
A ver, ¿quién más hay por aquí? Está Lucrecia, ¿no?
You too! If you're ever in London, let me know. We can go to bars and drink wine and listen to the stories of the 9 million people who live there.
Claro, porque esto es el final. Es que en este final los han mandado al presente, no a su época.
I hope so.
Lucrecia. Esta era la médico, ¿no? Bueno,
You are
ayudante de
here.
médico.
It's nice to finally meet you. Lucy is fine. I'm making an effort to blend in, as you can see. We are all trying to keep a low profile. If the world knew we died 2,000 years ago and were suddenly brought back to life 12 months ago, they'd never leave us alone. Speaking of which, I wanted to say thank you in person. I'd say the gods smile on you, but I hear you drove the last of them off. So...
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm studying to get into medical school. As much as I resented the responsibility of keeping everyone in the city alive, when it ended, I realized I missed it. So I guess I'll just keep saving the world, if begrudgingly, one patient at a time.
Pato el Madrid. Me alegra verte.
You too. Don't be a stranger.
Vale, esto es rápido.
Hey.
Horacio.
Hi there, I'm Horatius.
Hola,
I
Horacio.
understand we have you to thank for giving us a second chance at life. And reuniting Centilla with us as well. So, thank you.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm living up north and studying in the military academy in Modena. I'm going to be an officer one day. The world's changed a lot. But some things stay the same. Would you believe we're still studying military tactics from my time? Alexander the Great, Caesar, Hannibal Barca.
Vale, Dani, muchas
Still,
gracias por pasarte, tío. Un
I have
abrazo.
to keep challenging myself to let go of old ways of thinking and embrace the new. As Seneca wrote, the ones who pioneered our paths aren't our masters, but our guides.
Siento que no pudieras volver a ver a tu hija.
Ah, you remembered that. Thank you. I grieved for a time, but that's done. In the words of Epictetus, as those who rode behind triumphant generals remind them they are mortal, remind yourself your precious one isn't one of your possessions, but something given for now, not forever.
Bien dicho.
Thanks. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard, but a few of us are going for drinks later. It'd be nice to chat with you some more.
Me parece bien.
Great. See you at drinks later, I hope.
Cynthia.
I take it you're the Oracle. Thanks for coming.
La primera que conocimos después de Asensio. La hija. Su hija.
Actually, I changed my name to Cynthia.
Cynthia.
I didn't want to be associated with Sentius after what happened. I'm not sure if you heard, but after you drove Pluto off, Proserpina emerged from the Great Temple. She knew right away what none of us had figured out about that psychopath. He'd been keeping my little sister locked up in the upper system all that time. But he's been dealt with. He's... you know what? The important thing is we'll never see him again.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
Anything I want. I'm a woman of means in a vast new world. I can go wherever and do whatever I please. Of course, I mostly just stay in my villa and have my servant Alexa summon things for me, because it's just awful out there. Barbarians everywhere.
¿Y qué le ha pasado a Ascensión?
He's still there, all alone. The last golden statue in the underworld. Trapped in a metal shell, slowly losing his mind until the end of time. Eternal torment. Just what he deserves, if you ask me.
Una vez me dijo que quería vivir para siempre.
Then I suppose he got his wish. You too. See you around.
Vale, a ver, ¿quién más hay por aquí? Este es Giorgio, modista.
Greetings. You must
Sastre.
be the legendary oracle. It is a sincere privilege to finally make your acquaintance. I am Georgius.
Me alegra verte.
I am told we have you to thank for freeing us from Hades, and for that I am most grateful.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I am reacquainting myself with Greece. It has changed so much over the last 2000 years, I barely recognize it. This is at once heartbreaking and thrilling. Perhaps one day, once I have seen all of this new Greece and sampled her delights, I will settle down in Santorini in a villa overlooking the Azure Sea. I hope you will join me there and regale me with the story of how you faced off against the fearsome god of the underworld and won.
Cuenta conmigo.
You too, my friend.
Esta es ser Fabia.
You're the one we've been waiting for. I'm Fabia. I wanted to say thanks for sending Galerius to save my life. I don't know how you knew. I would have been crushed by that shrine for sure. I'm just so happy to be here with you and everyone together again, even if it's just for one more night.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
Well, it's not like I have to work with all the silver Karen gave me, so I just do what makes me happy. Mostly that means baking for my friends and looking at memes while binging TV shows in yoga pants. What a time to be alive.
Un descanso para refrescarse, es que hace calor. O sea, ¿a cuántos grados están ahí? Bueno, Levante está aquí cerca. Me alegra verte feliz.
Thank you. I really am. You too.
El filósofo ermitaño, gente. Está aquí también.
I take it you're the oracle everybody's talking about. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Ya nos hemos visto antes, aunque no espero que me recuerdes.
We have. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Philip, mira, nos ha dicho su nombre por fin.
I'm Philip. I never thought I'd leave that cave, let alone the city. And now I'm living in the 21st century. What a time to be alive. And it seems I have your catabasis to thank for it.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm working as a consultant to the Faculty of Classics at Cambridge University, helping fill the odd gap in their knowledge. Not that I need the money, but I do love being around enlightened minds again. My sincere thanks once again.
Octavia.
Oh, hello. It's lovely to meet you. I've heard so much about you.
Yo también me alegra
I'm
verte.
thankful that you're here. I was sure the person who drove off the last pagan god would have more important things to do than visit the likes of us. But thank you for coming and for saving our lives. What you did was extraordinary, and I'll never forget it.
Vale, ¿qué es de tu vida?
I'm living in Rome again, in a charming little flat by the Tiber. Not far from my old place. Oh, and I'm training to be a crisis counselor. After you sent Galerius to persuade Ulpius not to take his own life, I was inspired. I just want to spend the rest of my life helping people, like you helped him.
Parece una causa noble, bien por ti.
Thank you. That means a lot. And you?
Good evening.
Livia.
Greetings.
Me alegra verte,
Thank
bien.
you for your kind words and for liberating us all. In all the time I was in the underworld, I never once imagined that I might end up in a place so much like Elysium.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm recovering. Octavia was kind enough to let me stay with her for a while,
At least until I'm well enough to be independent again.
¿Has leído algún poema bueno últimamente?
Ah, you remember that. I'm a little tired of Ovid, but that's all right. I have 2,000 years worth of poetry to catch up on now. I'm already up to the 19th century, and am quite enjoying the work of a fellow named Poe. I think I may have found a kindred spirit. Men have called me mad, but the question is not yet settled whether madness is or is not the loftiest intelligence.
Bien dicho.
And you, farewell.
Farewell.
Some soiree, innit?
Hombre, el bueno de ese.
Ah, hello at last. You must be the oracle I've heard so much about. I'm Dacius. Listen, I wanted to express my sincere appreciation for what you did. If it wasn't for you, I'd never been able to sell all those useless old relics I accumulated. Whatever you did in that temple made me a very wealthy man.
Maldito, nos dejó encerrados.
Thank you.
No soy de adrede.
Such acerbic wit. I love it.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I took the money I made from selling my trinkets and started investing in the stock market. That's where the real money is now. In fact, I was hoping to ask your advice, you being the oracle and future seer and all that, on which stocks I should invest in next. I can't decide between fossil fuels, tobacco, gambling and arms. What would you recommend?
Me temo que en realidad no puedo ver el futuro.
Oh, don't be like that. You can tell your old pal.
Cállate ya, pesado. El alquiler de DVD le espera un futuro brillante. La televisión va a ser la siguiente gran innovación. La prensa impresa va a volver a ponerse de moda. Mira, el alquiler de DVD espera un futuro brillante.
Oh, of course, yeah. I was just thinking the same thing. I'll go home and buy up as much stock as I can tonight. I'm gonna make a bloody fortune.
Dale, tú dale.
Of course, don't let me keep you. Thanks again for the tips.
¿Qué vas?
It is an honor to finally meet you, Oracle.
Gracias.
You know my name? Oh, of course. You are an oracle. You know many things. I too would like to offer my thanks for releasing us from that place and for your role in bringing us here. This world is truly wondrous.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
For a time, I returned to Alexandria, but they have no need of another fisherman, and I came to see there is nothing for me there. Instead, I have decided to follow the custom of your youths and backpack the world.
Mochileros.
It is a great adventure, and I have met many people from many cultures. I spent the first 25 years of my life avoiding the 42 sins that would deny me access to the afterlife. Now, I think it is time I had some fun.
Parece que te lo has ganado.
Indeed. Thank you.
Luis. Joder, cuánta gente. A ver.
Hello there.
Mira, sencilla. Hola.
Oh, I go by Gabriella now. I didn't want to be reminded of that monster every time I heard my own name.
Gabriela, bonito nombre.
You didn't hear? My adoptive father, Sentius, locked me up in the upper cistern to stop me from escaping.
Hostia, vaya partido,
After he
colega.
drove Pluto off,
Madre mía.
Proserpina came and released me, and that monster got what was coming to him.
Al final Proserpina la salvó. Vale. Parece que se ha llevado su merecido. ¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm living with Ulpius on a little vineyard in Umbria.
Claro,
It's even more wonderful
se
than I
gustaban
dreamed
los
it would
dos,
be.
claro.
I'm so grateful to you for making sure he's still with us. If you're ever passing through the region, I hope you'll come and visit us. You can try some of our very own wine.
Puede que lo haga.
Thanks.
Este es Ulpio, ¿no?
It's nice to finally put a face to the name. I'm Ulpius.
Yo también me alegro de
I
verte, tío.
understand I have you to thank for sending Galerius to save me. The way you just showed up out of the blue and stopped me from making a terrible mistake. I'll be forever in your debt.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm living with Gabriella in Umbria. We finally bought the little vineyard we always dreamed of. It'll be a little while before we know what we're doing, but every day I look at her and this extraordinary new world with all its beauty, and I think, what if I'd given up?
Tenía que haber hecho otro directo, gente. Estoy molido, tío, ¿no?
Missed
Me dura
out
hasta la
on
cabeza,
all
tío,
this.
la espalda,
So we're
todo,
living each
tío.
day to the fullest.
Y es que ya no veo
And
ni
the
las
end
letras ya.
all the same way. Sitting
Casi
together
casi
on
7
our
horas.
terrace with a glass of our
Tenía que haberlo dejado a las 4 horas.
The locals say is almost
A
drinkable
ver, pero yo
now.
pensaba que iba a terminar
Watching the sunset over
el
the rolling
juego
hillside.
entero.
And I couldn't be happier.
Es que no estoy disfrutando el final, gente, porque es que tengo ganas de terminar. Pues estoy muy cansado.
Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you. You too.
Vale. Este es Virgilio y Rufio. Rufio, venga. El de la mala hostia.
Nice to meet you.
Yo también me alegro de verte, tío.
I go by Rufus now. New start, new name.
Ahora se llama Rufo.
Oh, and thanks, by the way, for what you did.
Expulsado porque un levante por mano fuera del área. Madre mía.
The mushy stuff.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I live with Virgil in Rotterdam, not far from where he grew up. It's very modern. Destroyed.
O sea, que al final tú también eras gay, cabrón. Y lo acusaba de ser gay al otro, ¿sabes?
Place for a fresh start. Haven't decided what I'm going to do
Qué
with my
cabronazo.
life yet. One adjustment at a time.
Resulta que tenías razón, las estatuas nos estaban observando.
Good to know. Anyway, it was good practice for the new world. Security camera.
Ya te acostumbrarás.
You too.
Virgilio, campeón.
It's so nice to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. I wanted to thank you personally for getting us out of there. And for helping Rufus come to terms with himself. He may come off a little gruff, but once you get past that, he's a lovely fellow.
¿Qué es de tu vida?
I'm studying to be an architect again, and living with Rufus in our beautiful flat in Rotterdam. Just down the river from Nijmegen, where I grew up. Of course, it's improved immensely since I was there last. Gleaming futuristic buildings and clean streets, full of educated, accepting people. You natives of the 21st century have no idea how fortunate you are.
Me alegro de haberte visto, ¿no?
You too. As Rufus said in his own laconic way, if you're ever in the Netherlands, we'd love to show you around. It's the least we...
Vale, están todos ya, ¿no? Hay alguien al final. Mira, la placa egipcia. Están las placas puestas. La placa sumeria. Bueno, no estará todo puesto, gente. Mira qué bonito, ¿eh? Mira, mira qué bonito. Qué detalle. Justo ahí se ve la luna, tío. Qué detalle, ¿eh? Este es sal, ¿no?
There you are. I hope you enjoyed that. Now, there's one more person I wanted to introduce you to. I think you know her.
Proserpina.
Sorry if I frightened you. Just a little joke I've been saving for a long, long time.
Reconozco esa
Allow
voz.
me to introduce myself properly. I am Proserpina,
Perséfone.
former goddess of the cycle of life and renewal, and now a regular mortal. I wanted to meet you in person. And thank you for freeing all these people. And me. I hate to think what would have happened to us without your intervention.
Llevas todo este tiempo susurrándome.
Indeed. Suffice it to say that while Pluto was controlling the eyes and ears of each golden statue, I was able to control their tongues and whisper to you when he was distracted. I am sorry my messages were so cryptic. There were only ever brief windows in which I could speak to you without being detected.
Hiciste lo que pudiste, gracias. ¿Creaste tú el bucle temporal?
I did. I may have given up my immortality, but I still retain my gifts as the goddess of the cycle of life and renewal. After witnessing Pluto punish countless poor souls over thousands of years, I knew this generation, the final wave, would not survive. So I tried to give them a way to buy more time. A second chance. Rather as many second chances as they needed to avoid his wrath. So I whispered to Sentius in secret, telling him the prayer required to create a portal in my shrine. I knew the danger of humans being corrupted by godly power, and so I put a safeguard in place. I required the creator of the portal to sacrifice their own life, so that it could only be used selflessly, to help others. What I did not anticipate is that Sentius would retain his accumulated memories from each previous day, and as a veteran soldier he had long since shed his fear of death. He quickly discovered that he could, in effect, prolong his own life indefinitely by exploiting the cycle. Of course, once I had taught him the prayer, I could not unteach him, and there was little I could do but wait for someone like you to come along and see him for what he was. We were all fortunate you came along when you did.
¿Qué ha sido de Pluto?
I don't know what happened to him. I haven't heard from him, and I rather hope it stays that way.
¿Qué ha sido de Caronte?
Oh, she inherited dominion over the underworld. Last time we spoke, she was working on a new world of some kind. She wouldn't say what it was, but I'd be surprised if you don't run into her again. I imagine we all will, one day.
Ha sido un placer.
And you, although it feels like I've known you forever. Oh, and one last thing. Do you remember all those golden statues scattered throughout the city?
Por supuesto.
Good, because they remember you. Well done, my friend. Of all the heroes who ever journeyed to the underworld and returned, none came close to achieving what you did. Hercules, Orpheus, Theseus, and Aeneas would be proud.
Somos el Salvador de la ciudad olvidada. Final 4 de 4, el mejor. Pero el 1 de 4, ¿cuál es, tío? No lo sé. Pero no pienso averiguarlo ahora. Estoy muerto. Estoy muerto, gente. Me voy, gente. Juegazo, gente, juegazo. Totalmente recomendado. 7 horas. Espérate a ver si se suma. Más 4. 11, ¿no? 11 horas en total le hemos dado. Voy a sacar de 2 ahora. Lo recomendaré, lo recomendaré. Pero ahora no. Otro día. Bastante que lo estoy subiendo. Bueno, hasta aquí este maravilloso juego. La verdad que me ha encantado. Me voy a despedir, gente, porque me duele mucho la cabeza y todo. La espalda, la cabeza, todo. Es que llevo 7 horas de directo aquí sentados en la puta silla y estoy que me muero, gente. Pero bueno, totalmente recomendado. Es un juegazo. Os lo recomiendo, de verdad. Si... Hombre, si lo habéis visto aquí, pues jugarlo no tiene ya mucho sentido porque ya sabéis cómo hacerlo todo y ya sabéis toda la historia. Pero si habéis llegado ahora, pues os recomiendo no de jugarlo, claro, claramente. Bueno, os recomiendo que lo juguéis. Vale, punto. Ya está. Totalmente recomendado, quiero decir. Nada más, gente, un besazo. Hasta la próxima. Voy a ver si puedo hacer una raid, gente. Joder, que dolor de cabeza, tío, de verdad. Y me he perdido 2 partidos del Madrid, tío. Quedan 2 minutos, dice Freeman. Empate a 3, tío. Partido de locos. Avero. Vale. Sí. Si está... Mira, tío, si no... me ha cambiado hasta la voz, tío. ¿Está Avero por ahí? Venga, vamos a dárselo a Avero.
Bueno, vale. Compro. A ver, señor. Este señor... Esto y... Él ponía... El problema es que como él se pone hemorragia, infección que diga, perdón, pone él.
Ahí va.
Mago.
Listo. Un besazo, gente.
Sorpresita.
Nos vemos.
¡Ey, señor Cojo! ¿Ya has terminado?